Atheism and agnosticism has been around in the Western world for a very long time now. Christians, even though we have been dealing with the historical case for Jesus Christ and with rebuttals against various arguments against God by atheists and agnostics, haven't really taken the arguments to the mainstream public to an extent. Today, the in the public arena, the culture, the popular culture, is sort of secular, not Christian, even in the Western world, which could be seen as Christian nations. And that is a great area of challenge for Christians. And so we have begun a new series, of course, dealing with atheism. This is Atheism Under Scrutiny with Arul Velusamy. Hello and welcome to all those who have joined us live. We should be live right now in Operation Stephen's channel in Soko and in Revelation 22:13. And today, like I said, we are meeting you on this program, Atheism Under Scrutiny with Arul Velusamy. And with me at studio is Jason. I'd like to introduce him a little bit more in a few moments. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah, in a couple of moments, a little bit more of an introduction of you. But before we get into that, I'd like to set the stage. Today's focus is going to be in particular on what is called the cosmological argument for the existence of God, and in particular, what is called the Kalam cosmological argument, looking at various evidence, various scientific observations that we have concerning the universe. As Christians, as theists, we have a strong reason to suggest to the world that there exists a God, and we also would like to present a particular set of details in relation to his attributes to the people who do not yet believe in God. And that is the context of our conversation. We are exploring things related to how the universe began and so on. And like I said, with me in the studio is Jason. Jason, thank you for being here with me today. Some of you who are familiar with Soko might recognize Jason. Perhaps just a couple of, maybe 10 days ago or so, Jason was with me at Speaker's Corner. Jason has been sort of friends with a few people at the park over the last few months, I think. And of course, Jason's current view is atheism, agnosticism. I let him give a little bit of introduction to you from him, but that's him. And today we are glad to bring him to the studio to have a conversation with him. Jason, please go ahead. Why don't you briefly introduce yourself?
Right. Thank you all. That's a really good intro. I've been engaging with people at Speaker's Corner. It's a very interesting place, and I happen to be one of the few atheists there. And I'd label myself as atheist and agnostic. There's not a dichotomy there. You could do you want to go over any particular biographical details?
No, just briefly, maybe your background in terms of work qualification and current work, and just a little bit of idea for people to understand where you come from.
Well, I have no physics expertise, just some interest in science. My profession is in programming, in software development. My background is studied computer science. And as a hobby, I've studied philosophy.
Sounds good. Great. So I'm assuming, I think my audio is really good. Your audio, Jason, if you can please maybe
Okay.
speak up a little bit when you're
Will I
speaking.
project?
I do apologize. We only have one microphone covering both of us today. But thank you for that self introduction there. I'm glad to have you here. Like I said earlier, now this is of course being live streamed across 3 channels. And today, what I'd like to do is this is not going to be a debate. This is rather going to be sort of a friendly discussion. What we are going to do is I'm going to lead this discussion on the cosmological argument, the Kalam cosmological argument. I'm going to, in a few moments, actually show something on the screen and take us through that step by step. And Jason, what we can do is, I'd like to do that step by step. So
Sure.
I'd like to hear your thoughts, where you disagree, where you sort of have interesting comments as we go through the argument.
Sure.
And perhaps also at the end, for you to challenge. You can challenge anytime the argument, the Kalam cosmological argument. If you
Sure.
want to challenge step by step as we go through, you can do that. Or if you want to just make minor remarks, minor comments as we go through the argument, and then reserve the actual main challenge to be at the end, that is fine also, Jason, whichever way
Okay.
you prefer. So please stop me at any stage.
Sure.
I'd like this to be a discussion where we are going forward step by step together, rather than sort of a formal debate of some sort. And I
Okay.
had a quite enjoyable time with you at Speaker's Corner. It was I thought you were.
Me too.
Thank you. I thought you were very reasonable and so on. So I'm hoping that we would be reasonable to each other as we go through the points I wanted to show. So that's the brief introduction. With that having said, for people who are watching live on any of the 3 channels we are live streaming at the moment, if you want to ask any question to both Jason, myself, if you are an atheist, of course, you might have questions to me. If you are a Christian, you might want to ask some particular questions to Jason. If you have any of those things, please feel free to maybe note those things down, or maybe put that down in as one of your comments in the different channels that you are watching this from. And we'll take up your challenges and questions at the end. I'm hoping, the first 40 minutes, 50 minutes would be essentially our discussion. And at the end, you can challenge. If you are an atheist who is watching, and if you want to challenge Kalam cosmological argument, please feel free to write anything that you have in mind down so you don't forget. And at the end, you can jump on to StreamYard live streaming. Of course, Jason is here with me in the studio, but you can join from wherever you are, and then you can make any specific comments, or make any challenge that you'd like to make. Okay, with that, let me actually now get my document up on the screen so I can show that to you. Just give me 1 second there. All right, so present, share screen. All right. Cool. So Jason, of course, it's a conversation between us at this time. Like you said, you had some interest in philosophy, and you have sort of picked up on some of those things before. You might be familiar with I think you did say that you are familiar with the Kalam cosmological argument.
That is true.
Yeah, that's good. So that makes our conversation a lot easier. So I'm going to, in this first screen, of course, show, hopefully you should be able to see this. Choose which screen is more convenient for you.
Yep.
So I just, a summary for you And also for the audience, in case there are people who have never come across this, hopefully they can go through this and understand properly. This is the main argument.
Yeah.
As presented, in the original sort of way by Al-Ghazali, who is the first guy to advance this cosmological argument. Two premises and then a conclusion, inevitable conclusion. If the premises are true, the conclusion ought to be true. That is the formulation of the logic here. If premise 1 and premise 2 are true, conclusion ought to be true. So in other words, our task is mainly to agree on whether the construction of the argument is valid. And if the construction is valid, then the task is only to agree on whether the premises are true. When the premises are true, the conclusion would automatically be true. Premise 1, whatever begins to exist has a cause of its beginning. Right. Anything that begins to exist has a cause of its beginning. Premise 2, the universe began to exist.
Right. Okay, well, just to interject, what definition of universe are we working with?
That's a good question. So I think for simplicity's sake, we would just go with the popular definition, the materialistic definition, the definition used among scientists today, mostly, which is that the universe is all of reality, physical reality that exists.
Only physical reality.
All of physical reality, including energy, and of course, all things covered by science, so to say.
Okay.
All of that reality is what we're talking about. So we're talking about galaxies, we're talking about all sorts of things, energy, different forms of energy, different interesting postulates of things like black holes and whatnot.
Sure.
Anything and everything which science claims that it can deal with, which would normally be covered by the physical, the term roughly, loosely, physical reality.
Okay.
That's what we can use that definition to make things simple. So those are the two premises, and conclusion is, therefore, the universe has a cause of its beginning. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore, the universe has a cause for its beginning. Now, that's Al-Ghazali's original formulation as William Lane Craig captures it. Just to introduce, William Lane Craig is a popular contemporary philosopher, Christian philosopher, and he's sort of, he's a main proponent of this particular cosmological argument, and he has his own little tweaks here and there. For example, I have presented William Lane Craig's own formulation. Most of the times in debates, he uses this slightly tweaked formulation, which is tweak in premise 1. Instead of saying whatever begins to exist has a cause, he says, if the universe began to exist, then the universe has a cause of its beginning. And then, of course, the other two he takes from Al-Ghazali. Now, that is the argument. That is the logical construct of the argument. Any thoughts on this construct, Jason? Would you agree that if premise 1 and premise 2 are true, then the conclusion is a necessity? The conclusion that has been presented here is a necessity. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree. Yes, it's a valid argument as far as I can see in both of those formulations.
Good. So, in other words, our focus could purely be on the validity.
Or you mean the soundness?
The soundness of the premises themselves.
Sure.
Because the construct or the soundness of the general argument, we are happy with. We are saying we are in agreement. Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Okay. So, but of course, if those who are watching online, if you have any comments to make on that regard, any challenge, you're most welcome to do that at the end. So, but Jason and I, we agree. The argument itself is formulated in a logically sound manner. Okay, now let's move on. Now the task we are going to focus on is actually in exploring the validity of the two premises.
Yep.
Okay, so by validity, of course, we mean the proof of the argument. Validity of premise one, or the support for premise one.
Is this in the original form?
This is in the original form, and with a little bit of input from William Lane Craig.
Okay.
Most of the stuff that I'm going to present today is William Lane Craig's argumentation. I do not agree with William Lane Craig in his argument in its entirety, but my disagreements with him are not on the actual construct of the arguments or the defense of the argument, but rather on some other details which have no bearing on the actual Kalam cosmological argument. So, in other words, I'm going to go with how William Lane Craig presents it.
Okay.
Yeah. So premise one, as you might remember, Jason, is this. William Lane Craig's especially. If the universe began to exist, then the universe has a cause of its beginning. Whatever begins to exist has a cause of its beginning. Okay. So support for that. Well, William Lane Craig presents three particular points there as by way of supporting. He says something cannot come from nothing. All of the observations we have, all of reality as we are aware of. Of course, there is plenty of reality that we don't see for ourselves, but there is a vast level of reality we see for ourselves.
Sure.
And we can, from what we see, we can come up with some general expectations about what we don't see, general sort of learning from life sort of stuff. And from there, the point is, we know from our experience of reality that something cannot come from nothing.
Reasonable.
In reasonable, we observe this in various realms of observation. Let's say in the deep oceans, or in the highest in deep space, or in the highest level of atmosphere where we have gone to do a bit of tweaking with clouds and so on, or whatever. All the exchange of signals in the ionosphere and so on. All sorts of different realms we have been in, we know something simply can't come from nothing. That's our observation so far as mankind.
Sure.
Second, that's one example. So here the important point to note is William Lane Craig, of course, presents three different points to support premise one. Each of them independently is sufficient to support premise. In other words, the moment we agree that one is true, then we have already supported premise one. Unless, of course, you want to challenge and present a contradictory view in some other way.
Okay.
But point number one is something cannot come from nothing. That's sufficient to say premise one is true. But let's say we can add more to that, more sort of evidence to that. If something can come into being from nothing, if contrary to premise one, if something can come into being from nothing, then it becomes inexplicable why just anything or everything doesn't come into being from nothing. If something can come from nothing, of course, we can expect things to pop up anywhere, everywhere. Suddenly things from nothing. You might be familiar with the popular experiments of the times past when people thought that you can close a room, close a room, and then they saw mice come out, and then they thought, oh, maybe life comes from nothing. Those sorts of experiments you might be aware of. The point is, if something can come into being from nothing, then we should be able to observe those somethings coming from nothing all over the place, anywhere, everywhere, which we don't.
Right.
And therefore, we can say that something cannot come from nothing.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And the third point is common experience and scientific evidence confirm the truth of premise one also. So point number one and point number two are philosophical arguments. They're dealing with something and nothing based on based on based on things that we as philosophers, as people who deal with logic, we have in mind. But the third is, even if you don't know philosophy, you can drill down in a very sort of experiential manner, in a very observed scientifically manner, and say a common experience and science deals confirms the truth of premise one. We don't see anything come from nothing. So
Sure.
three different ways. They're not too different, radically different from each other, but slightly different formulations of the same idea, ultimately supporting the validity of premise one, which is when something begins to exist, it has to have a cause. We always think, oh, why did this happen? That's our normal experience. And that is applicable to the universe also. If the universe began to exist, then the universe has a cause of its beginning. That's only natural for us to assume that for the universe also, because that is the only thing we know of.
Sure.
Yeah. Are you happy with the validity of premise one, or would you have any particular thoughts on that?
Well, premise one, going by Bill's formulation of premise one,
Yeah.
specifically, and we're going by the definition of universe that is specifically physical universe, or the sum total of objects and phenomena dealt with by science.
Yeah.
That's okay. So as long as we're limited to that, well, I'll be okay with going forward on that premise.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so we are in agreement with the validity of the formulation of the argument. We are in agreement with the validity of premise one also. So now the focus is on premise two. I'm assuming that's where perhaps you might differ with me. Let's see how things go. So premise two is the universe began to exist. Is that true? Did the universe begin to exist? That is the question we are going to deal with. And support for premise two from William Lane Craig's formulation is going to be on 4 levels. He gives 2 philosophical arguments, 1 scientific confirmation, and another scientific argument. So 2 philosophical, 2 scientific.
Yep.
We can take any one of these, as long as even one is true, unless there is a good way of contradicting that, the premise 2 would already be true. Okay. So with that having said, let's jump on to the actual backing or the support of premise 2. I said 2 philosophical arguments. The first, Al-Ghazali, in his original formulation, he says actual infinities could not exist. Actual infinities could not exist. William Lane Craig essentially is in agreement. He doesn't want to refine this particular argument itself. He only goes on to give some specific examples and tries to apply that in the case of, let's say, the universe itself.
Sure.
Yeah. But the ultimate idea is actual infinities could not exist. Of course, as you could imagine, where this would be applied is if someone were to argue that the universe did not begin to exist, then the universe itself would be an actual infinity. If it didn't exist, if it was always there, the word always we would
Right.
use in English would be the rough equivalent of what mathematics would understand to be infinity. There's no beginning. We're not talking about the end so far, so it's an infinity.
I can think of an exception to that.
What's that?
Yeah, the exception would be a universe of a non-infinite time duration that's but is infinite, that is eternally repeating, eternal recurrence.
Yeah. So I okay, yes. So in your maybe I'll let you repeat that. Can you please repeat that?
Okay.
And I'd like to pick your words
So the
to make
idea
my
of
statement.
an eternal recurrence, which I'm not committing to as an actual true cosmology,
Yeah.
but that would entail no fixed beginning point in the universe, and also no a non-unlimited amount of time.
Sure. So an eternal recurrence.
Right.
In other words, along time dimension, it is infinity.
Along.
It goes through a state of fluctuation because
Yeah.
in you're using the word recurrence.
Right.
And so I'm assuming it goes through some fluctuation.
Sure.
But regardless of the details of the fluctuation, it exists in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
In an infinite time dimension.
The time dimension would be, you could call it infinite. You also call it looping.
Yeah, whichever term you use. I think the precise detail as to how it is infinite
Right.
will only matter in regards to getting into the details of how infinities exist.
Sure.
But now the point is you are asking for an infinite time, which is infinite time.
Right.
With me on that?
Sure.
Yeah. So and this particular philosophical argument actually is going to claim that, like you said, you're not committing to that particular cosmological model. But philosophically, Al-Ghazali says such infinities could not exist.
Okay.
At all. Which means what you're postulating in your mind, he is going to argue, and I'm going to, of course, present his argument, that what you have in your mind simply could not exist.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to, so that is what Al-Ghazali says, actual infinities could not exist. William Lane Craig gives a couple of examples and then sort of solidifies logically through a formal logical conclusion that actual infinities could not exist. I am actually going to slightly differ from their postulations. I am going to say I slightly differ, and I'm going to make my statement in a slightly different way. I'll come to that in a bit. Now, in regards to William Lane Craig's example, he gives one particular example. His prime example in this case is Hilbert's Hotel. I don't know if you've heard about that Hilbert's Hotel sort of paradox. You have, yeah. Now, but for the benefit of those in the audience, and just to make sure we are going to be on the same page, the rough idea is Hilbert's Hotel is a particular way of formulating a hypothetical scenario using the example of a hotel and guests coming into the hotel and so on. And using the hypothetical scenario, and of course, in this case, we want to expand. We want to introduce the idea of infinity in the example of a hotel in terms of number of rooms, number of people who come in, and so on. And using that hypothetical scenario, the idea is to explain how that sort of hotel could not exist.
Right.
Yeah. The idea here is essentially, if conclusion, maybe we should focus on the conclusion first, so we can, when I give the example, we can sort of understand what I am talking about. The conclusion is, if such a hotel exists in the way I'm going to describe in a minute or so. Essentially, this particular thing I am highlighting here, this particular sort of notice or message I'm highlighting would be a valid message. We have no vacancy, but guests are welcome.
Okay, it seems like a contradiction.
Exactly. So in other words, exactly, the message is contradictory. And so when now let me expand on what this Hilbert's Hotel is. When I expand on that example, you will understand that if such a hotel it could exist, then this message has to be true, should be true, at least in some situations. But we understand it's contradictory. So we can't go with this example in real world.
Sure.
And so how does the example go? Well, this is Hilbert's Hotel. It has a countably infinite number of rooms.
Yep.
Infinite number of rooms. And it can also have an countably infinite number of guests who turn up to the hotel. Now, let's begin with the situation where infinite number of guests have come and they are occupying infinite number of rooms.
Right.
Because there are infinite rooms, you can sort of give accommodation for infinite guests.
Sure.
Now, if we assume, for example, there are a few different scenarios we could consider. Maybe we'll stick with the simple scenario. If there are 5 more guests who turn up, would we have room? Would we not have room? Remember, the place where we started off is by saying infinite guests have come to occupy infinite rooms. So all rooms are taken.
Right. There's no vacancies.
No vacancy. There are 5 more guests. Now, we said we have infinite rooms. So we can never get to a situation where we can't have more rooms. That's the definition of infinity.
Right.
There's no number higher than that.
Sure.
Yeah. So we should always have some extra space that we can make in the hotel. So 5 more guests have come. What we're going to do is, well, we have infinite people from room 1 to going to room infinity. We're just going to actually move them all by 5 rooms. Number 1 guy is going to go to room number 6, whereas he was in room number 1 first. We're going to move. We should be able to move because we have infinite rooms.
Okay.
And we had infinite people, so we should be able to fit them in. 5 more guys, 1 to 5 is free. They can come in.
So an infinite number of guests moves rooms.
An infinite number of guests moved rooms, moved from one infinite, not one infinite, from the infinite room 1 to infinity to 6 to infinity now. And 5 more have come to take up the first 5 rooms. So still we have infinite guests,
right?
Infinite rooms, all rooms taken, because there are infinite guests occupying infinite rooms.
Seems moving an infinite number of guests. That seems, the starting point seems like an absurd operation.
Well, why would it be absurd?
Well, the starting point of having infinite guests, the setup is just kind of the point of this is to show that the setup entails logical problems from the start.
Yeah. So do you?
So I guess the idea is the first mistake that should be avoided is the supposition of an actual infinity. I have to think about that a bit more, but that seems. So it seems like the sign no vacancy, guests welcome. Could be a true description of an infinite hotel.
Yeah, this is a simple definition of infinity. It doesn't define all of the characteristics of infinity, but a simple statement that captures the sort of underlying attribute of infinity is that there can never be a number greater than that. When we're talking about infinity in terms of numbers, there can never be a number greater than that. And so the description of the hotel, the rooms and the people and so on are very valid descriptions.
Right.
very faithful to the definition of infinity.
Sure.
Except, like you said, it results in the idea of no vacancy, but guests are welcome, which is logically contradictory.
It's, well, it sounds logically contradictory, but so it's true that at the starting point there's no vacancies,
Yeah.
but then you do the shuffle, and then there are vacancies.
Yeah, the shuffle is just to simplify the explanation of how we made room.
Yeah.
But the shuffling has no implication on the number of rooms used. Even
Right.
without the shuffling, I can explain this in a slightly more complex manner. Well, in other words, you can almost sort of ignore that shuffling if you can sort of get your head around infinity, the definition of infinity. The point simply is infinite people occupying infinite rooms, so the hotel is full.
Right.
Whichever way you move people, if there is room to move people, you can move. No, none of them is leaving.
Right.
None of them is making room by leaving.
Sure.
All of them are still staying. So whichever way I move them inside the hotel, it shouldn't really matter in regards to implications on the infinity.
Right.
It only helps me simplify the explanation. So when I move, so therefore I can move the infinite number of people from room 1, room 2, room 3, and so on, going up to room infinity, and then move all of them by 5 rooms.
Yep.
So the first guy now is in room 6, and the last guy is in infinity plus 5, which is really infinity because there's no number greater than infinity.
Right. Well, there's no last guy.
There's no last guy, exactly. But this is the exact point. This is in other words, we can agree with the formulation. Actual infinities could not exist in a very simplistic manner. Also, if we want to, but we can expand that to when you say there is no last guy, you are essentially saying there is no such formulation. There is no such hotel. There's no such last guy. There's no such series of people. That's what you're ultimately saying when you say there's no such last guy.
I don't know if that's what it entails. So, the absurdity of the sign, so it sounds absurd, but well, it just means that's what you have to accept. If you do accept an actual infinity.
Exactly. So, in other words, an actual infinity, as long as we get our heads around it, would lead to things which clearly are absurd in our real life experience.
Sure.
Things which are logically inconsistent in our real world experience.
Right.
That is the key of this. Yeah. That is the key of using this example.
Sure.
We know this is insane to say no vacancy but guests are welcome. Well, that's a bit insane. It's you never can imagine such a situation in your experience.
Sure, it's something. Well, we're imagining it, but it's outside of our experience.
Exactly, outside of the experience of all of mankind throughout history.
Sure.
Cool.
Throughout hotel history.
Throughout hotel history and any, of course, the idea of hotel is just to make the example simple for everyone to follow. But it's true with any other formulation, just with dealing with geometry or something else and whatever. This is true.
Sure.
Yeah. Now William Lane Craig, of course, goes on to use that to say that a universe cannot have an infinite past. What you were suggesting as to recurring universe, where time in the past is forever and ever, infinity. William Lane Craig is going to suggest that is impossible because, number one, actual infinities cannot exist. Number two, an infinite temporal regress of events. In your case, to make it really simple, ignore all the minor epochs and this and that and whatever. We can just consider the actual recurrences you have in mind.
Sure.
However long they are, maybe they are 100 billion years long.
Yep.
You can ignore all the details that happen in the 100 billion years. Just stick with them. Stick with looking at the 100 billion year of one recurrence as one event.
Sure.
And his William Lane Craig's point is, if you just consider even at that level, an infinite number of such recurrences is an actual infinity. And we know actual infinities are not something that we are familiar with, we can accommodate, and therefore we need to say this is absurdity. It doesn't exist. In our experience, does not exist. Therefore, an infinite when I say in our experience, I don't mean our experience of hotels alone. What I mean is even in our experience of the imaginary things, even the things that we can conceive in our minds, it simply could not exist. And so William Lane Craig goes on to suggest that an infinite temporal regress of events cannot exist. So the universe could not have gone through an infinite temporal regress of events. In other words, the entire lifetime of the universe could not be infinity, because it's a temporal regress of events, i.e. time-based regress of events.
Would that cause any similar comparable logical problems? Not sure why.
It's the same. I mean, the conclusion from here, Jason, from the conclusion from Hilbert's Hotel is, maybe let's do one thing. I'll give the conclusion, and I'll let you maybe have a little bit of thought experiment.
Okay.
But the ultimate conclusion, by giving the example of Hilbert's Hotel, is that actual infinities could not exist, because if they did exist, they lead to all sorts of absurdities like this. This is just one simple example.
Okay.
It'll lead to absurdities. In other words, they simply can't exist. Now, you can challenge this by coming up with, even if not now, at some stage in your life, coming up with a nice example of how you can envision an infinity with no logical absurdities whatsoever when presented to scrutiny. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So you can say, actually, you know what? My idea of an actual infinity in this particular manner could work.
Okay.
If you can do that, you have sort of undermined the argument. But in my view, there is only a little bit of room where I think I don't agree with this. And that's where I'm going to tighten this up a little bit more. And so this is my own sort of refinement, where I'm going to say actual infinities could not exist within the dimensions available in our universe.
Okay.
So all the dimensions you can think of, space and time and everything else and so on that we are aware of, temperature, take anything you want to take. Any physical thing you can measure.
Okay.
Any of these things, and prepare a set of dimensions, which is the set of dimensions for the universe. With these dimensions, I agree, actual infinities could not exist. I can imagine of how actual infinities could exist. Okay. But for my ideas to work, I need to break away from the dimensions that we currently have in the universe.
Okay. So with the Hilbert's Hotel example, so what you're saying that is just one of many examples of demonstrating the impossibility of an actual infinity in this, with your qualification.
Exactly. In our universe, it's absurd. I agree.
Okay.
In other words, my only refinement is I believe in one actual infinity who is God himself. But I'll go to, I'm not going to focus on that, on how I have come to the conclusion that there is one actual infinity, namely God of the Bible, who is not bound by the dimensions of the universe. I'm not going to focus on that now, because that is not important for the argument that I need to make, which is that universe did not have an infinite past.
Right.
You with me on that so far?
Yeah. So No, I still don't see how, the absurdity in this one example. Or maybe you have other examples as well. Maybe I'll be convinced by those. But yeah,
I mean, essentially, the idea is simple, Jason. The idea used here is that of a hotel.
sure.
Essentially, if I were to sort of assimilate this example and sort of give in a very generic form,
Mm.
the idea simply the any example could be formulated.
Yep.
There are any number of examples that could be formulated, any number of types of examples. One type is where is what is used in Hilbert's Hotel, and there the idea used is there is no number greater than infinity. That is the key mathematical idea used in
Sure.
this example. There is no number greater than infinity, and that is why when we wanted to move people by 5 more rooms, we were able to say, yes, I have those 5 more rooms because if I have infinite rooms, there is no
Yeah.
stage in my sort of existence where you can say I can't have. I have had enough people come in. If you see what I mean,
Sure.
you can apply that to length. You can apply that to, for example, if let me, if I were to think aloud and say, if you take a thread
Yeah.
which is infinite distance long,
Sure.
um, essentially, and if you put that in a cover which is infinite distance long, some sort of a wrapper which is infinite distance long,
Yeah.
you can always say my thread is within my envelope wrapper, and at the same time be able to say my thread can't be contained by the wrapper.
It can't be contained.
Yes, at the same
Okay.
time. At the same time, it is perfectly wrapped by the wrapper and can't be contained by the wrapper.
Okay.
If
No,
I
that's
have
not.
an infinite distance long thread and an infinite distance long wrapper, I
Yeah.
can, of course, cover it properly. Yeah.
Sure.
But my thread is infinite distance long, and
Mm.
therefore I can always figure out, oh, actually, I have a little bit more in length because there is no length which is greater than my length because I'm
Right.
infinite in length.
Sure.
I'm a little bit longer, in which case the wrapper would not be enough because I realized that I'm 1 centimeter longer than what I thought I was.
Okay. Well,
You see what I'm saying?
1 centimeter longer than infinite. That's that's an absurdity,
Well, that's the point.
right?
The entire point, it's an absurdity in your view, but my point is with infinity, there is no length which is
Yeah.
greater than my length.
Okay.
And so 1 centimeter longer should still be infinite length. And I am
Sure.
infinite length.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? If
I,
I'm really infinite length to begin with, I can be 1 centimeter longer than any wrapper in the world or any wrapper that you can imagine.
except for an infinite wrapper.
Even with an infinite wrapper, even with an infinite wrapper, if I am truly infinite, I can be 1 more centimeter longer than that. I should be because I am of the length where no one can supersede my length.
Right, but so is the wrapper. If we're going for this, if the starting point is infinite, then you can extend both of those. It's like extending the hotel, I guess.
Exactly the point. Exactly the point.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I agree with you. Now, example, we can talk about both sides of the story.
Sure.
But one side of the story is true also.
Okay.
You know, do you see what I'm saying? When I have a thread which is infinite distance long, when I have a wrapper which is infinite distance long, for a moment I can sort of neglect the wrapper. I'm not focusing on the glory of the wrapper.
Okay.
And then I can focus only on the glory of the thread. Because it is infinite, it doesn't matter who else is infinite. Nothing else matters. If I am truly infinite, I can go one. I can't be. I can always be longer than any length of anything else. Otherwise,
Right.
This has
Yeah.
no bearing on whether the wrapper is only 5 centimeters long, only infinite centimeters long, and so on.
Okay.
With me, that's the very definition of my infinity. Infinity, my infinity.
Right. Well, the definition is there's no limit. So you
The,
can always.
the definition is, in one way you can say there is no limit. In another way you can say I am greater than any other number you can find.
Right. Well, any other finite number.
No. If I am infinite, I am infinite. I am more than any number you can find. If infinity is
right, any number, but infinity is not a number. Well,
it is a number. It has to be a number.
yeah, you can
Also,
treat it as a number, but if you treat it as something that can be compared to other numbers, then you can compare infinity to infinity.
not in terms of equal to. You can never say infinity equals to infinity in this particular way. Any infinity that okay, let me take one step back. Take one step back. I think the hurdle that we are hitting, Jason, is actually an idea that I'm going to make, a point that I'm going to make outside of the argument here.
Okay.
And that is, I do believe in the existence of a real infinity, and I do believe that real infinity, there is only one real infinity, not more than one, only one, and that is God himself. And I do also believe that true infinity is actually infinite in all regards, not just in length, not just in weight, not just in height, and so on. In any measurable regard, he is infinite.
Okay.
So I think that is what we are essentially, the problem we are running into is in terms of understanding how two infinities can work in an example together. If you see what I mean,
right?
Because we're talking about a wrapper, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you notice carefully in Hilbert's hotel also, that is the example we were dealing with. The number of rooms is like the length of the thread.
Yeah.
The number of guests is like the length of the wrapper.
Sure.
And we said we have infinite number of guests coming into infinite number of rooms.
Yeah.
Remember? So we're talking about similar pattern there. The problem we ran into is when trying to envisage two infinities working working in the same environment, which should be possible without causing logical contradictions if infinities are possible within our dimensions.
That seems fair.
Yeah, and so the point there is, when I'm talking, if we stick only to the example of the thread and the wrapper, the point is ignoring the glory of the wrapper. I should, because infinity is a standalone thing. The fact that the thread is infinite implies some, let's say, glory to the thread in some way, shape, or form, whether the wrapper exists or not.
Okay.
With me so far?
I'm not sure what you mean by glory.
Well, what I mean is the wonderful attribute that there is nothing longer than me.
Okay.
And that is why I am infinite.
Sure.
That I'm of length infinite. That is what I'm referring to as the glory. And so I'm as long as anything else, if not more.
Sure.
Yeah. So the point simply, there is a wrapper infinite. If infinities do exist, all over the place, you can have another infinite wrapper come and wrap this properly, completely wrapped. But because the thread is infinity, you can always have the thread not be completely wrapped. In other words, the thread at the same time is both completely wrapped and not completely wrapped, which is the very definition of infinity. You can say that you can sort of depict a story as a slightly different story, but using the same sort of parameters to the glory of the wrapper also. I agree. Like what you were trying to say earlier. You can do that.
Right.
But both sides should be true. A must be true, B must be true, A and B must be true, A or B must be true.
Okay.
You with me so far?
Yeah, I'm with you that I don't believe there are infinite real threads.
Real
infinite threads.
Infinite in length, you mean?
Infinite in length.
Exactly. And that is the conclusion. So because of the complexities we are seeing here, it's not just the complexity, but the absurdities we are seeing here, the conclusion derived is actual infinities could not exist.
Right, so that would apply to applies to the thread and the hotel.
Yeah.
But about the eternal recurrence model
Yeah.
of the universe,
Yeah.
an analogy would be a thread of finite length that is a loop. So it's not infinite. It's a finite amount of material making this thread, a finite amount of material making this universe, but it's oscillating.
Mm, okay. I see where you're going with this. So, in your view, because you've made it a loop, you're then saying it's finite.
It's finite, but endless.
Finite and endless, in your view. But the problem the point you're missing there is, for you to call something recurring,
Yep.
the point of start and the point of end are the same. I agree, recurring.
Yep.
Of the recurring state, or maybe to be more accurate, if you consider each loop, the point of start is not the same as point of end.
It's in this model it is indistinguishable.
Okay, let me put it this way. In your recurring model,
Yep.
do you think there is loop 1?
There's no beginning.
No, but how do you want to, I mean, to sort of give labels? Is there one?
We can call our loop 1.
Loop 1, yeah. And do you believe there is a loop 2?
Yep.
And so that's my point. So
loop 2 and loop 1 are the same loop.
No, they can't be the same loop if they are going to recur like that. The moment do you see what I'm saying?
Why can't they be the same?
Because in your description they're not the same.
Well, in this description, the end, it's like the end of the universe is the cause of the beginning of the same universe.
No, wait a second. You can't. No.
Yeah,
No. Let's stick to
the cause.
Let's stick to the precise point you made right now. So in your point, the end of this universe is the reason for the cause of which universe?
The one universe.
No, that one universe is ending, but you are going to now start something. What is the start? What is starting? The same universe 1 or universe 2? Because universe 2, what is about to start right now in your mind,
right?
What is about to start right now, that can't be the same as what is ending now. That's logical fallacy.
What's the fallacy?
The fallacy is if you're going to say that it is going to start right now, it didn't exist before this.
Well, it did exist before in its previous iteration.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. You have to call what was there before previous iteration. Somehow you need to distinguish what is ending with what is starting. Somehow. You can use any term you want. You can use maybe the term in terms of time, term in terms of physical material, term in terms of some other thing or whatever else. Somehow you need to denote what is ending versus what is starting, because they are different. What is starting now, by the definition of the word start, clearly implies is not the same as what we are talking about when we say what is ending.
It's so you can conceptualize them as different, but in this model, if it's
it may
sense, it is.
It may in your I'm trying to understand. You may think they have the same properties,
right?
But I couldn't care less.
Okay.
Because having the same properties do not necessarily mean they're the same stuff.
Sure.
You can take 2 carbon atoms and they have same properties. You can take 2 other stuff and they may have same properties. My point simply here is, the moment you're talking about a loop, like what I quite like the statement you made earlier. Iteration.
Sure.
Previous iteration versus current iteration versus next iteration and so on. Somehow, when you talk about a loop, like in computer science programming, somehow when you talk about a loop, you need to be able to distinguish in whatever dimension.
Okay.
I'm not concerned about what dimensions you're using there, but in some dimension, you need to be able to say there was an iteration 1, iteration 2, and so on.
So from the point of view from within the universe, or yeah, potentially if you could remember the past situation, then you could refer to the next situation. That is fair enough.
Yeah. So we are no longer talking about, so we are at least, so because you mentioned a past versus current versus next and whatever else number of times in the future, we're talking about an infinite, something that exists in infinity, at least in time.
What?
At least in time.
Right.
And we just said actual infinities could not exist. And we can, I mean, the Herbert's hotel example, I can give some such example even using your infinite recurrence.
Can you give an example with infinite time?
Absolutely. That's the very, for example, I can give you an example right away actually. If there are how do I say, okay, if there are infinite people, infinite people occupying one person in each recurrence occupying the recurring universe. In iteration 1, number 1 guy is there.
Sure.
Right. In recurrence 2, number 2 guy is there, and so on.
Okay.
Yeah. So infinite number of people, infinite recurrences. So clearly, in all recurrences of this universe, there is someone there.
Yep.
But the very idea of infinity is there should be a recurrence where there should be one more recurrence.
Yeah.
In which there was no one there.
Why would there be no one there?
Because of the example I gave here before. So, infinite recurrences, infinite people, one as part of each recurrence.
Sure.
Yeah, because there are infinite people, all the recurrences are occupied by a person.
Okay.
All the recurring iterations of the universe were occupied by a person. Yeah.
Yep.
But we understand the number infinity to be higher than any number.
But not higher than infinity itself.
No. Ignore this other infinity. You're now trying to compare infinity versus infinity.
Yeah, that's where the problem.
No. In math, as a computer science engineer, if you remember your mathematics and so on, you would understand it doesn't matter. When we, let's say, do integral calculus and differential calculus, especially integral calculus and so on, limit x tending to infinity, 0 to infinity. Do you remember those kinds of stuff?
It's been a long time.
Long time, but do you roughly remember?
Nope.
No, not at all. Okay. Do you roughly remember you saying infinities in mathematics?
No, I don't think I've never really used them.
Okay. Well, I did use infinity fairly extensively because I did in mathematics. I had to do calculus, all sorts of deep calculus and so on. And in my engineering days, I had to do proper engineering mathematics and so on. Some very real examples, but the point I want to simply make is we dealt with what we called infinities in all sorts of different forms, but with no consideration for the existence of any other infinity. We didn't think when we are dealing with this particular infinity, we didn't care about what other infinity is involved. That's how the calculus works. You just need to focus on this variable and the fact of it tending to infinity, and that will work fine in mathematics. You don't have to think as to whether there's some other infinity or not. Yeah. In other words, my point simply is, in the example that we were dealing with in the case of your infinite recurrence of the universe, the infinite recurrence of the universe is infinity. To begin with, I'm introducing there are infinite number of people, one occupying each of the recurrences. But then now I'm forgetting how many people are there. I'm not going to even think about that anymore.
Yeah.
If the recurrences is infinite, truly,
Yeah.
then there should be at least one recurrence more than any number of recurrences that could be occupied by a person.
I don't see how that follows.
That is the very definite. So I think where we okay, go on, please. Comment.
So in this setup, we're thinking of a universe containing one person,
Yeah.
and then that universe ends in a new universe which contains one person, and this repeats infinitely.
Yeah.
How do we get to the empty universe?
Well, exactly in this manner. So you have infinite recurrences, infinite people. So far, fine.
Yep.
All instances, all the iterations are taken by a person. So far, fine.
Yep.
Now, I just focus on the fact that, in my view, there are infinite recurrences of the universe.
Sure.
I understand mathematically, when I have infinite recurrences of something, I should have at least one recurrence more than any other number of recurrences.
Any other number of recurrences?
Exactly.
Okay. Well,
And so that is the very definition of infinity. As if I have an infinity as part of my number system, if I have an infinity, the moment I have infinity, I can say this is greater than any other number. And I don't even have to qualify and say any other finite number. No one qualifies in that manner. If I have infinity, a true infinity, it is always greater than any other number. Which means, if I have a number of recurrences already, all of which were occupied, but because I have infinite recurrences, I can always have one more recurrence where there is no one to occupy it. So in other words, it leads to the same problem. No vacancy, guests welcome. Same problem where I say everything is occupied by one person except there is one which is free. But there is one which is free, but there is more which are free.
This seems a bit less clear than the hotel example. So this, we don't have a starting point of all the recurrences being occupied, but
we have the starting point. Yeah, all are occupied.
All occupied.
Yeah.
If all are occupied, then how do you get one more?
Well, the way we get one more in the recurrence, one more recurrence. The way we get one more recurrence is purely focusing on the point that we have infinite number of recurrences.
Sure.
If we have truly infinite number of recurrences, we should have number of recurrences which is always greater than any number of recurrence. That is the true definition of saying I have infinite number of recurrences.
This seems like when we set up these premises, well, that includes the infinite number of people occupying these recurrences. So we can't just ignore that premise when we.
No, we should be able to. This is the beauty of this is. So I think where we are sort of on two different planes there, Jason, is in terms of actually having experience using that infinity in mathematics. You are a computer science engineer, so you should be able to grapple with mathematics, which you haven't done much, or maybe which you did a long time ago.
Deal with infinity.
Absolutely. Well, computers can't even deal with finite.
Right.
The very idea of saying artificial intelligence is absurd, oxymoron. And so no wonder computers can't deal with infinity. But my point is, as a computer science engineer, you'll be able to deal with mathematics even if you haven't touched on that before in your past, or maybe you touched on that a while ago.
Yeah.
My suggestion, my simple point, I think the way we disagree, as far as I can see, is on the simple point where I am asserting quite confidently that when I am dealing with one infinity and working with that, I do not have to focus I do not have to care if there are any other infinities around it.
Okay.
Conclusions I can derive from this one infinity would still be true, if such infinities do exist.
Okay.
That is where where we are sort of on two different planes, I think. Do you maybe you can take that home to maybe sort of explore that a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, why don't I? What's the time right now? So so why don't I actually move on to the second philosophical argument?
Let's do that.
So, like I said, my refinement is in the dimensions available in our universe, and that will come in handy later on. And like I said, maybe one more point I'd make here as a sort of a side point, just as some interesting point for others to take home and for Jason to take home also, is that I believe that there is one. I haven't worked on this. I'd really like to work on this mathematically through God's grace at some stage. Just haven't found the time and space to do that yet. I'd like to do research on infinities, philosophical and mathematical. And my sort of hypothesis at the moment is there is actually an infinity in reality, but there is only one, and that infinity is infinite in all dimensions. Okay. This is as a side point for whoever is watching there to take home. If you want to do further research, or if you want to reach out to me, whatever, if you please feel free. Okay, second philosophical argument, slightly different formulation, but dealing with the same kind of infinity logic, where it brings out the idea of how absurd a true infinity is. Al-Ghazali says, no series, in this case, time series, time 0, time 1, iteration 1, iteration 2, no series which is formed by adding one member after another. Iteration 1, remember you said previous, current, next. It's sequentially ordered. After one, adding one member after another, including series of the past events. You can do that in the going backward also, can be actually infinite. It simply isn't possible. It's another way of attacking your same sort of model in your mind. That's why I wanted to move on to this.
Okay.
So William Lane Craig gives a few examples that explain to us how this is true. I.e., if they were real infinite, it'll be absurd. So they can't be infinite. Any series where you have one after another. So one example: if you're going to count up to infinity, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, counting up to infinity.
It'll take a very long time.
It'll take a very, very long time. But if such an infinity exists, it should be possible. At some stage, you'll reach that infinity. If that infinity exists. That is the key part here. Whether such an infinity exists is the key question we are asking. Even though it may take a long time, if it exists, we should be able to reach there ultimately, if we are alive and so on. Of course, we're talking about a hypothetical scenario. So let's pretend we'll be alive, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and going all the way to infinity. Now, when we count down from that infinity, of course, we'll end up with a 0 on a, coming down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Right.
On a particular day. Clearly, if we count one per day or a million per day, it doesn't matter. It will come down to 0 on a particular day. Clearly.
Well, you're never going to get there.
Why not?
You never, starting from 0, going to infinity. Well, you never reach it because there's always more finite numbers.
You're exactly making the same point I was trying to make earlier, but in a slightly mathematical, purely just mathematical format. So the question is, you're never going to. So the point you're making is you're never going to reach it. Yeah. And the question I'm asking is, why won't you ever reach it? And the answer you're saying is, well, any number you reach, there's always more numbers to go to reach the infinity. And that is why I extended the length of the thread by one more. Because anywhere you reach, there's always more.
Sure.
But If that infinity exists, you should be able to reach, because it's real. In your view, you of course you didn't say you're going to stick to that or advance that particular cosmological model. You're not going to advance that in your scientific research, but you are considering that to be a valid example to contradict some other cosmological model.
Yes.
Yeah. If it is valid, we should be able to reach that infinity. If it exists, when I say if it is valid, we mean if it exists, if such an infinity, if such an infinite number of recurrences actually exists, you should be, because it exists, you should be able to reach.
You can't reach it from a finite starting point.
Why not?
I don't know. Well, if
well, the universe reached it from a finite starting point.
No. Well,
the universe has reached it from somewhere.
Well, if the point would, well, in the eternal recurrence model, there is no starting point.
No. I think you're missing the point. The universe is going on a recurrence, according to you. Yeah. I don't have to join with the universe right at the start. I can join in any time. Like what you're thinking. This is the cosmology of, in your view, that is the cosmological model. And of course, you and I did not join at the start of this infinity.
Right.
We have just joined now. Yeah. But as long, of course, in our hypothetical scenario, where are we right now? Where are we right now? If the universe has been infinite already, where are we? In that infinity.
Sure.
Yeah. So we have reached it. It doesn't matter when we join. The fact is, if there is an infinity which the universe has reached, we are there with it.
Sure.
Yeah. So reaching an infinity, if an infinity is real, we should be able to reach it.
We should be able to reach it.
Even finite things should be able to reach it.
Well, we haven't reached it from a starting point infinitely from an infinite past.
I agree, Jason. My point isn't we have traveled through all of the infinity. That is not my point. That is my point in this counting exercise. But in my current example, that is not my point. We joined only in the last sort of, 11th hour, so to say. Maybe less than the 11th hour. But regardless of when we joined, we are in that infinite state right now. Because that is where the universe is. So we are experiencing that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the problem then?
The problem is you should, if infinity is real, which it has reached, if it is real, someone somewhere should be able to experience it. It can never be an unreachable goal.
With those premises, then we have reached it.
Well, with your formulation, we have reached it, of course. Yes. And that is another absurdity I'd like to point out with your premise. With your premise, we have reached it. With your formulation of the cosmological model. But coming to the counting to infinity example, if such an infinity exists, people ought to be able to reach it. You might just say you need to count a bit faster. But somehow, if it is real, someone somewhere should be able to reach it.
By adding one member after another.
Yeah, by adding one member after another. Or adding 5 members after another. I don't mean in particular. Essentially, going through a sequence, you should be able to say, okay, now I'm at infinity. Okay. I'm not even talking about infinite lifetime. You can pretend it's some sort of an artificial person who is reaching it. Yeah? Okay. The problem then is when he counts back down, infinity, -1, -2, -3, -4, infinity -4, -5, and then coming all the way, he will at some stage reach 0.
Well, he never reaches 0.
Why not? If 0, are you now compromising finitude for the sake of infinitude? If infinity is real, you must be able to reach. How much more so if finitude is real, which we know to be the case, we should be able to reach.
This, well, so the way that Al-Ghazali puts this premise,
Yeah,
I don't disagree with that.
yeah.
The what does he how the how an eternal past of how does an eternal past um, contradict that?
I don't understand.
So okay. So no series which is formed by adding one member after another
Yeah,
can actually be infinite.
yeah.
Um, well, in the eternal recurrence model, it's not formed by adding one member after another.
It is.
It's but it's not doesn't start with one and then well, if there's no finite starting point, then there's no problem of trying to start with the finite and get to the infinite.
Okay. I mean, you essentially to deal with your universe, Jason, we don't have to go through this example. Yeah.
Right.
Let's say we agreed, if that is a real cosmological model, valid cosmological model, we are saying we are actually in that infinite state right now, infinite iteration right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Can we now theoretically, hypothetically, as a thought experiment, can we count down through the previous iterations from here? I'm not saying we should be alive with it.
Can you count? Well, you can
count because you're talking about recurrence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can now count down from we are in infinity.
What are we counting? We're just thinking about the past iterations.
Yeah, count down. And I don't mean think about the previous iteration, the one before that, and so on. Yeah.
We can do that to a finite extent because we are finite.
No, I agree. So your constraint is in the fact that we are finite.
Yep.
My point is, as a thought experiment, give us immortality. As a thought experiment, we're just looking at that and counting back. As a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can count back.
Sure.
Count down. Sorry, going back.
Okay.
We are in infinity. Yeah. -1, infinity -1, infinity -2, -3, -4, -5. Yeah. You can count down.
We can keep doing that.
Keep doing that, and we can get to 0, because 0 is a very real state which the universe was in at some stage.
We can't get to 0.
Why not?
By starting with infinity.
Why not?
And counting backwards.
Yeah, why not?
To get to 0, well, that would imply an infinite amount of getting to the end of an infinite process.
Yeah, which I'm perfectly capable of allowing my example counters to, because I'm saying I'm immortal. The one who is counting here in our example, let's call him Tom. Tom is immortal.
Okay.
So he doesn't have any limitation in terms of time.
Well,
so he can go back, count.
You say he has no limitations, but I don't know what that means. If he's something like
an abstract.
Like us.
No, just imagine.
So he's just not going to die.
Yeah.
But he's still just dealing with mathematics as we understand it.
Yeah. It's just a simple counting.
And he lives in time like we do.
No, he's an abstract. I mean, imagine, you know about computer science, when it comes to theory of computer science, automation and so on.
Okay.
Yeah. Just ignore the limitations of the one who is counting. Because I'm dealing with the concept of infinity. I'm dealing with the idea of infinity.
Okay.
Yeah. That is where my focus is. Now, if you are going to say that no one can count this infinity, then we might as well give up.
Sure.
Then we might as well give up in claiming universe is infinity, infinite, because no one could have counted that.
Well, just because someone can't count it doesn't mean it can't be real.
Exactly. Apply the same. You need to. You can't have the cake and eat it too. If
Yeah.
you want to imagine a recurring universe to be a reality to begin with,
Right.
apply that same concession to the person who is counting down. Is a reality. To be able to count down to go to zero is a reality.
I'm not sure exactly what we're imagining. A person who's timeless,
Yeah.
but doing arithmetic in his head with finite and infinite numbers.
Let's put it this way, Jason. Maybe to simplify, let's ignore a person who is counting.
Okay.
Let's ignore a person who is counting. Let's just look at the universe you have in mind, the cosmological model you have in your mind.
Yep.
According to you, it has come through infinite recurrences.
Right.
But it is in a state right now where we are experiencing it. So it is a real state right now.
Sure.
Now you can label, just as a thought experiment, label the previous iteration. How do you want to call the previous iteration? Previous iteration?
-1.
-1. Very good. We can do -1. Infinity -1. Yeah?
Infinity -1.
Yeah, this is infinite state. Infinity -1. The current iteration is infinity, whatever large number that is.
Okay.
The previous iteration is the previous. What is currently, whatever the number is, the previous number.
Yeah.
The previous number. The previous number. The previous. You can always label all the iterations in the past.
Sure.
Going down like that. You can always label. Let's say we have enormous power to label all of them like that. In one instant of time, you can label everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you go down like that in number, in the dimension where you have numbers being counted up, when we are going backward, we should be able to reach zero, because zero is very real. Zero is a very real number. Do you see what I'm saying? When you're counting down, we should be able to reach zero. Zero is a very real number.
That is, well, you won't be able to.
Why not?
If there are an infinite number, then
you know what you've done right now.
Start.
You know what you've done right now.
I don't know what.
What you've done right now is, for the sake of making infinity real, you have compromised on the reality of zero.
The reality of zero.
If it is real, it should be it is something that can be experienced by someone. I'm not saying by who. If something is real, it ought to be experienced. It ought to be able to be experienced by someone.
Okay.
Yeah. That is why. That is how we call it real. That's why we say, well, this is real. This exists. And the number zero certainly exists. Whether the number infinity exists or not, we don't know. But the number zero certainly exists.
The number zero does?
Yes, the number one does. These are numbers which we know for sure. Even before dealing with infinity, we knew for sure 0, 1, 2, 3. These numbers exist because we have to deal with them all the time. How many what is the remote control do I have in my hand? 1.
Right.
That's a very real number all over the place. How many phones do I have in my hand?
Okay.
1.
So in this example, we're starting with this iteration being labeled infinity.
Yeah. And so the previous iteration would be 1 less. Whatever this infinity is, 1 less.
Yeah. And well, you can just flip that and say we're in zero.
Exactly. And you go back to minus infinity.
Yeah. Well, you can't go back to minus
exactly
infinity.
The point.
Yeah.
If you cannot go there, it is not real. It simply can't exist.
Minus infinity.
Yeah.
It's not real, but that doesn't mean that has to be a first one.
No, I'm still not concerned about what is the first one. I am just saying, if I'm going to, in an abstract manner, label things in the past, I'm so far only saying, if infinities do exist, from where I am, which is infinity, I should be able to go back and label all the way to going down to 0. Because 0 is very real. Whether infinity is real or not, I don't know, but 0 is very real. I should be able to count down. If I can count this number,
the label might not apply to what we're talking about.
Why not?
Because if we start with infinity, or start with now being labeled infinity, which is confusing. And then the previous one is infinity minus 1, then the previous one is infinity minus 2. Then then what is real is the numbers, is that which is labeled infinity minus n.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how big n is, if it's finite, then the sum is not 0.
Yeah. So in other words, what you're saying is a long about way of what you're saying is we simply can't exist in infinity right now. If in your mind the universe has come through all that, yeah. In your cosmological model,
In this model, yeah.
the universe has come through all of that to be where it is right now.
Yep.
And your claim is it has already gone through infinite recurrences.
What?
Yes, that is what you're claiming. If it
Yeah.
has come through, clearly it has counted. Let's pretend the universe can count.
Sure.
If it can come to where it is right now, which is an infinite state, it has certainly come through 0, 1, 2, everything to get here.
Well, you're assuming, well, 0 and 1, 2. Is that the first and the second?
No. Okay. Count down. The universe has come through whatever numbers it has come through to get to where it is right now.
I think we're going in circles.
Exactly. I guess where we are disagreeing is the simple idea that whatever state the universe is in right now, you simply can't call it an infinite state. That is where we are disagreeing. And the moment I'm making that infinite state real, you're saying you can't get to where it should have started. And therefore, this state where we find ourselves in ought to be finite for the number of iterations the universe to have gone through to be sensible.
This seems like we're just talking about whether or not we can apply these labels, and you think we should be able to have iteration 1 and 2, but if our starting state is in midstream in infinity, then the labels 1 and 2, well, the labels first and second don't have any meaning in that setup.
But they are somewhere.
Well, no, they're nowhere.
So 1 and 2 are nowhere.
They're nowhere.
But infinity is there.
It's right here.
So Jason, what you have in effect done is I'd like for you to think through this a little bit more. What you have in effect done is, for the sake of arguing infinity to be real, you have compromised on the very reality of finitude.
Sure.
Let's put it this way. You have inversed or experienced entirely. That is what I'm going to suggest to you. Yeah. Let's put it this way. If at all so let's say we have finitude and infinitude.
Sure.
If at all anyone argues for the reality of one of these first, it should be the finitude. That we know to be real.
The finitude of what in particular?
In this case, the very finitude of numbers, where we're using
specifically the past of the universe. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, specifically the past of the universe.
So you think our starting point should be that it is just a priori, we should just assume that it is a finite?
No, I'm not assuming anything. I'm just saying to assume the philosophical argument here is such an infinity cannot exist, because if we assume it to exist, we'll end up with all sorts of absurdities, like the absurdity we have tackled, which is universe has come through all these iterations, but you are saying no one else can go through all those iterations.
Sure.
Yeah, which is an absurdity. If the universe has experienced all that to come to this infinity, why can't this abstract person I have in mind abstract? Just for the sake of counting. He should be able to do the same. You're saying that's impossible. If that is impossible, the universe couldn't have done that to begin with.
I see your point, but
you don't see enough to agree with me.
Not
Okay.
quite.
So, okay, that's fine. So what we can do, Jason, is if you please take these points, both points on board,
Sure.
where my point simply is the moment we know finitudes, the numbers infinitude is real or real. Infinitude, whether it is real or not, is what we are arguing about.
Yep.
And my point is, if we assume infinitude to be real, we end up in all sorts of absurdities, like what we have ended up in our discussion.
Okay.
My point simply would be finitude. We settle it should be our reference point. We know it to be real. So wherever it exists, you should be able to be there and explore.
Okay.
Infinitude, we may not get to, whether we go forward or backward. If it is infinitude we are dealing with, we may not get to, because that we don't know if it's real or not. But because of the fact that if you assume infinitude to be real, you end up in absurd states where you can't even get to finitudes. You need to give up on this idea that infinitude is real.
Okay.
Maybe we can drill down on that a little bit more later. Can I please move to the scientific? So I said there are two philosophical arguments.
Yep.
There are two scientific arguments. One actually scientific observation. So there's no argument involved here, scientific observation. And another is actually a scientific argument. The scientific confirmation or observation is essentially what is known as the cosmic microwave background radiation. I did mention this to you the other Sunday.
Yep.
There are two very important observations that we need to be aware of. One is the redshift in light from astronomical objects.
Yep.
And another is cosmic microwave background radiation. Now here I am going to deviate from William Lane Craig, sort of to an extent, not in terms of the validity of his underlying argument, but in terms of extra details that he also agrees with.
Okay.
He agrees with Big Bang theory. I do not at all. At all. Not in the way it is postulated right now.
Okay.
And that is not even needed to make the argument for to substantiate Kalam cosmological argument.
Okay.
To substantiate Kalam cosmological argument, I only need the bare minimum objective scientific observations, which are two things, which is where my focus is going to be right now. Redshifts in lights from astronomical objects.
Yeah.
And cosmic microwave background radiation that we observe today.
Fine.
Two things, very important. Cosmic microwave background radiation is very real. We observe it to be of sort of equal, sort of similar temperature across the universe and so on. Telling us essentially what the implication of cosmic microwave background radiation is that the universe is inflationary. It has expanded.
Sure.
Because of the expansion of the universe, we have radiation left behind, which is described as cosmic, which is essentially in the microwave. You might be aware of electromagnetic waves, especially in the microwave wavelength range. And the cosmic background radiation is in the microwave range, and that is as a result of the expansion of the universe. So that is one. The universe has expanded, or still is expanding. And the next one is redshifts in lights from astronomical objects. We still observe what is called redshifts in lights, or in light from astronomical objects.
Yep.
This essentially goes back to how white light is seen, in the entire spectrum, and how there are spectral lines. Are you aware of some of these details? Are you aware of terms such as spectral lines, redshift, and so on? Broadly, yeah. So even if you did not know the intricate details, I've done some of these experiments, not in regards to measuring things from astronomical objects, but measuring in physical laboratories in my engineering days. But the point is, even if you don't know the intricate details of the experimentation and so on, what you would be aware of is the simple, broader or higher level detail where we say when a particular object that you are observing, when you're observing the light of a light spectrum of or that is reflected from a particular object, if the particular object is moving away, then you see the wavelength of light moving towards the higher wavelength, the spectral lines moving towards red.
Right.
And that is what is called redshift.
Okay.
When you observe redshifts in wavelengths, what you know is that what you are observing is actually moving away from you.
Sure.
And what we observe in regards to the universe is all the things that we are aware of and that we can measure in the universe are moving away from us. Everything is moving away.
I think that's more or less true.
That's more or less true. So cosmic microwave background radiation tells us that it is the universe is expanding. Redshift in another way is telling us it's expanding, it's going away. Everything is going away from each other.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you trace back in time, you can go and say, well, this is a starting point. Because we know, do you see what I'm saying?
So when you go back, things will be closer together.
Will be closer together, exactly. Yeah. They have started from a point where they were very close to each other, and then they're moving away.
Sure.
We have no indication of anything other than moving away.
Sure.
So you can only, when you go back in time, you can only project backward and say they were earlier closer together, and so on. So both of these observations clearly indicate that the universe had a beginning, from where it moved away, from where it expanded, from where every heavenly body, astronomical body, moved away from each other. That is the scientific observation here.
That seems so.
Yeah. So in regards to scientific observation, there is universe is finite.
Sure.
You can trace back, and this is where some of the proponents of Big Bang theory postulate that the Big Bang, that moving away is called as Big Bang in that Big Bang theory, the place, the point from where it moved away, or the process by which it moved away, began to move away, and so on, and that is postulated to have happened around 14.5 billion years ago.
Right.
Yeah. The point is, I don't agree with the rest of the details of how the calculations work, but I agree with the idea that you can go back at some stage, you will figure out that they were one. There was a starting point.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, in other words, this is a scientific confirmation of the fact that the universe is finite.
Sure.
Any other astronomical model, cosmological model you have does not have scientific backing. The thing like what you were proposing in terms of
an eternal recurrence.
Eternal recurrence does not have.
Yeah, it's speculation.
It's a completely speculatory model which cannot be supported by evidence. I have a few books in my library here somewhere. You should be see Cycles of Time, Roger Penrose, and so on. You see that the theory of beginning and so on. So of course you might be aware of the multiverse theory and this and that and so on. Multiple examples of cosmological models advanced, but we need to be aware that none of them, the moment they go against this idea of a finite start and finite time expended so far, they do not have scientific backing. In terms of, when I say scientific backing, backing of scientific observation.
Sure, that's fair to say.
Yeah, cool. So, in other words, universe is finite, at least in this regard, if not in regards to the philosophical arguments we advanced. There's also one more, this is scientific observation or confirmation based on observation. There is also the scientific second scientific argument.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we need to sometime soon. Maybe 5 more minutes. Let's sort of wrap this argument up and take questions from audience. Just give me 5 minutes. JC is indicating to us that we have spent a long time, without user interaction there. Okay, audience interaction. Sorry. Second scientific argument is fairly simple again. That if the universe had been around for infinite period of time, then the universe should have gone through what is called heat death already.
Yeah.
We shouldn't really be finding any energy in this universe anywhere.
Right.
The energy should have dissipated everywhere to an extent there is no energy left anywhere if it is of infinite past.
Right.
This is based on scientific argumentation, not based on whether infinities exist or not. But we do realize that the universe hasn't gone through a heat death, and therefore we can say that the universe hasn't gone through infinite period of time. Finite. So both the scientific observations essentially tell us finite universe. The philosophical arguments again tell us that infinite universe is an impossibility. In other words, if we go back to where we started, we said if premise 1 and premise 2 are true, conclusion ought to be true. Premise 1 is true. We already agreed. Premise 2 is true. We didn't agree based on philosophical arguments, but we agreed based on scientific arguments. But based on the fact that both are true, based on at least 2 points we agreed on, then the universe has a cause for its beginning. Has a cause. The only question left is, what is the nature of the cause?
Sure.
And going by the definition of what we said about universe, if the universe is all of physical reality, the cause which led to the universe cannot be physical. If the universe is all that we observe according to science, which is including within space and time, the universe is outside of space. The cause which led to the coming into existence of the universe is outside of space and time.
Right. Well, so the cause is beyond. It's beyond our science. Beyond the reach of our scientific observations. I don't know if necessarily that means that implies it's non-physical.
It has to be
in principle beyond our understanding of science.
No, if universe is all of physical reality, whatever caused that all of physical reality is not part of that physical reality. So it has to be outside of the physical reality, outside of the time and space that we are aware of.
Well, that we're aware of, it could be within its. Seeing the conclusion. So it's in terms of the causality of what I said in the part was the cause of the universe in its current state is the universe in the previous state. Whether or not that's within our scientific grasp is another question.
It is the question. If you can, the point simply is you can't hold on to your idea of the infinite regress, infinite recurrence of this universe as a scientifically valid point.
It's philosophical, not scientific.
I think. Okay, so maybe we can sort of quickly wrap up on that, Jason. My point is, on the philosophical front, we disagreed.
We did.
My earnest suggestion there is that the point that I was making was very valid, and you were compromising on the reality of finitude for the sake of establishing the reality of infinitude. So philosophically, I am going to continue until, of course, until we can agree through God's grace at some stage that such infinities can't exist. The universe could not have existed for infinite period of time or infinite recurrences. Simply could not have. If we assume it did philosophically, as a model to ponder, then we'll be left with all sorts of absurdities.
Okay.
And so even philosophically and scientifically, I think that's a baseless model you have in mind. Not substantiable, both on philosophical grounds and scientific grounds.
Okay.
And so that is where the conclusion here is on the nature of the cause: beginningless, uncaused, spaceless, immaterial, changeless, timeless, unimaginably powerful personal creator. Some of these should be obvious. Timeless, because all of time, all of within time, all of what is within time we call universe. Spaceless, because all of what is within time we call universe. Immaterial, because all of what is material we call universe. Changeless, all of what we observe to have changed, we call it universe. So these things, by the definition of universe, we are saying the one who has caused this universe is outside of these sort of parameters.
Okay, and outside of science, outside of what can be principally observed by science.
No, essentially what we have done is okay, it depends on what you mean. I can't go and test God in a laboratory. If that is what you mean, I agree.
Right.
I can't test the temperature of God. If that is what you mean, I agree. I can't go and test the length of God, the height of God, whatever. Like how I can measure the distance between from us and Saturn, I can't go and test the distance between us and God. Those things I agree. So it's not up to scientific experiments in this way. But he's not non-observable by science in another way, which is using science, using scientific argumentation. I can clearly see that I can come to this conclusion. So to that degree, he is approachable to scientific quest, if you see what I mean. Using science, I can say, oh, whoever the creator is beyond material, space, time, uncaused, because he is the cause of all things that came into existence.
Okay.
And beginningless, unimaginably powerful for him to be able to bring into existence what we have. The humongous universe, to bring it into existence, and a personal creator. So in other words, that is an inevitable conclusion once we agree on any of the 4 arguments we presented for premise 2, and we agreed on at least 2 of them. And so this is the inevitable conclusion. Now, Jason, please don't. I know we can discuss this for longer, but can I please? I do apologize. Can I please bring in anyone who is watching live stream? Can I please, if any of you have any particular challenges that you want to bring in, any challenge that Jason hasn't brought, please do come online. In the description of the live stream here, in each of our channels, we should have, I'm assuming we should have the StreamYard details. JC and Fred, please, if you can make sure the StreamYard details are everywhere, that'll be great. But if you can please join, that would be great. Any challenge, anyone with a particular challenge, please jump on to StreamYard. What I can do is perhaps post the link here. Any one of you who is watching online, if you are an atheist or agnostic, and if you think Jason hasn't covered a particular point, or if you want to add support to Jason in a particular way, please do come online to make your specific case. So Jason, while we wait wait for people to join. So
Hope someone does.
hope someone does. Absolutely. So going back to the point we were making, Jason.
Yep.
So
So the last step of the argument.
yeah, the last step of the actual attributes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you have any concern about any particular attributes there, or
pretty much all of them, I think. So you well, you can't go before the beginning.
Mhm.
So whatever. So if you call the first cause timeless,
Yeah.
but it's involved in a causal relationship with time universe, then well, logically, how does that work?
Okay, cool. Let's bring in Ram here. There's Ram who has joined us online. Let me bring, but please hold on to that thought, Jason.
Yeah.
Let's bring Ram here and find out what he has to say, and then try and answer. Hello, Ram.
Hello, Arun. How are you doing?
By God's grace, doing well. And Jason, hopefully you can say the same. Yeah, you're doing well. How are you
Uh,
doing, Ram?
Not bad, Arun. Hello, Jason. I was uh, I was getting curious looking at all these comments and hearing Arun about uh, universe and all the things that he said. I have recently been reading the Indian philosophy of Advaita, which is non-duality, where the perspective is very different from what the Abrahamic religions propound. And to me, that sounded very interesting. And when Arun, you were talking about the universe, in fact, you were repeatedly talking about the universe. Um, it it brings a little bit of it. It contradicts uh, what the philosophy of Advaita tells people. The philosophy of Advaita tells people that the thought of the universe is only a thought that happens to us. What it means is that the universe does not really exist the way we think it exists. Uh, Only the thought of it exists in our minds. So when I'm looking at you right now, y- according to Advaita, this vision of you is being created within myself. So um, I am talking. Yeah, yeah. Jason, go ahead, please. Go ahead. I mean, I'm sorry.
So does that mean in this philosophy that well, or that the universe does not exist?
Yes, the universe doesn't exist the way we think it exists, because when we think about the past doesn't exist anywhere except for within our minds. When we talk about yesterday, which is past, where is yesterday apart from it being in our minds? The
Well,
pa-
there's some,
the
there's this physical evidence of things that happened yesterday that exist in the present, isn't there?
Yeah, but where do we analyze that evidence? That evidence is analyzed within our own minds. Our thought analyzes that evidence, and then it assumes or it thinks that something has happened in the past. Similarly, even the future is also assessed only in our minds. So past is happening in our mind, future is also happening in our mind. So the only thing that is really happening is the present, which is right now. So what is really happening is right now. The past we have no control on. It's like dead. It's happening only in our minds. Even the future is happening again only in our minds. We can only think about it. um, so what Advaita says, that according to nature is controlled by these three modes of material nature. So the first mode, they say, is the mode of goodness. What it means is that Arun, if we look at Arun, or if we look at Jason, they may be, or if we look at Ram, right now we may be laughing, feeling happy, being very nice to each other, thinking that we are inherently nice people. However, it's only the mode of goodness that has taken over us for that moment. So we think that, the mode of goodness will make everything look good. But then when that mode of goodness changes, it enters, not like in that same, like in that sequence, but it can change into something which is a mode of passion. So all the anger that happens, all the ambitions that happen, they happen to us through this mode of passion. And the third is the mode of ignorance. A lot of things. So the whole universe, the so-called material universe, is managed or is run via these modes of material nature. One is goodness, the other is passion, the third is ignorance. But the entity to whom these modes happen, the witness of all these three modes, which is unchanging, the unchanging witness, the attributeless witness, is the consciousness, is the awareness, who we really are. So when Hinduism or Buddhism or Advaita philosophy is basically more associated with Hinduism. So when they talk about self-realization, it means that we realize that the whole universe is happening because of our karma. Something happened because of which we had to take birth. We undergo a lot of experiences based upon these modes of material nature, and which mode is more empowering, which mode has more power over us. So if modes of yeah
Sorry,
so
go on.
if I am born in a certain mode, so I that mode will be more will be more dominant. It will guide most of my actions. However, that entity which is behind, which is like a substratum, which is like a screen, it's a blank screen to which all the act, all the play of life will happen. That entity, that awareness is the real me, and whatever happens is just happening. I'm thinking, and also it also tells something very, very amazing, which really delighted me, is that all these actions that are happening, they are happening on their own. You know, they are preordained. So even if I'm thinking that I am walking, that walk is happening on its own, because I really don't know how am I lifting my hand. If I'm lifting my hand, I have not created this movement. This movement is inherent. It is automatically built inside me by somebody, by someone, through a process. So we go through this life thinking
Okay.
that we are, yeah, we merely go through this life and a lot of experiences, but we forget, in the process we forget uh, our real nature, which is just of pure witnessing, complete, like we are witnessing. Even right now when I'm talking to you, there is a witness which is seeing all this thing happening. But the only villain, the only bad person in this entire thing is my mind, because my mind is conditioned through these three
Um,
more.
thank you, Ram. Maybe if I give you 10 seconds to wrap up on that point, please. I'd like to respond. Sorry.
Yeah, so the concept of universe as we know is only a thought in our mind. The universe is coming to us as per our desires. Whatever I'm desiring, my body is automatically acting, taking actions to fulfill that desire. And there is nothing called a universe. uh,
Sure.
it only exists in our mind, is my, like,
Ram,
is my submission.
absolutely. Ram, really great to have you on board and making that point. I'm really grateful for that. It's a pleasure to have you here. I mean, before I jump on to making any particular comments, um, may I please comment to you that I'm really, through God's grace, eagerly awaiting the time which hopefully comes soon. I'm sort of envisaging sort of Q1 next year, where I can begin exploring, scrutinizing Indian religions, including Advaitism, and of course, you would know that Hinduism is not one unified religion. There are plenty of different ideas and so on. So I really encourage you to stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed to Operation Steven channel, please do. And hopefully sometime soon, very particular, very tailored comments would be coming up, and hopefully we can engage in great detail at that time. Now, to comment on the points you've raised so far, please bear in mind, to say that the universe exists only in our minds, that would not be valid. That would not capture all of reality as can be observed and agreed upon. For example, let's say I am sitting here. The fact that I am sitting here, your submission is only in my mind. But the point is it in my mind? Would Jason think that I'm sitting here?
I'll agree with that.
Would Ram, you think that I'm sitting here?
Yeah. So
let me please finish the points I want to make here. The point simply is to claim that what is happening in the universe is only in the person, in the mind of the one observer, i.e., me, is not true at all. There are plenty of facts which are not even in the minds of all observers, but could be hidden yet be true. Plenty of fossils on the face of the earth today, which perhaps are uncovered yet, and therefore are not in the mind of anyone, yet very real. Deep ocean. You might remember was that MH370, the Malaysian Airlines, which drowned a few years ago, and we struggled to find the remains of it in its reasonably entire form. No one knows where it is till today. We found some parts here and there and so on, but it is still real. It exists somewhere, except not in the mind of any one of the human beings. So to claim that universe is just in the observer's mind, and especially my mind, is not true. It doesn't do justice to what we're talking about. Also, the other point you made, which is that something is good versus something is bad only in my mind, again, is not real. There are you might be aware that this popular Indian guru called Nityananda, and there are popular other gurus. I can remember going back in time. I'm thinking about a couple of other gurus that come from my own home state. The one who I have in mind is a guy called Premananda. If I remember correctly, he comes from a city called Trichy in Tamil Nadu. He was revered as a guru by thousands of people, including Westerners and so on. But what turned out to be true was that he was a sex maniac. Now, observing people in their private, places of residence where they thought they had privacy, but this guy had secret cameras and so on, observing and so on. Did he do evil? I would like to think that you would agree with me that he did evil, and that comment that he did evil is not just in my mind, but is that something that we can all agree on. And I'm sure when we go through detail after detail after detail regarding plenty of things, we can already agree on the idea that many things are evil. Many things in reality are evil. And therefore, to back up a philosophical model of existence which claims there is no such thing called evil is, in my view, simply not doing justice to what we understand to be reality. So those are my quick thoughts, Ram. I do apologize. If you want to stay online, please do. There are a couple more people. I'd like to bring them on board also. just would like to hear what they have to say. If you want to stay here, do you mind if I put you in the backstage for a few moments? I don't know if you have more time.
No, definitely have time. I just want to tell you that I love all your videos where you are, debating all these fanatic Islamic chaps, and you're making your points. And I was looking for you. The reason how I landed, watching this live feed from you guys is because I was searching for you because I loved how you were debating these guys. So I love you, Arun. Thank you. And I have a few things to say about what you just said, but because there are people waiting, so maybe I will put them forth some other time, some other day, probably. So yeah, feel free to put me at the background. Let's hear what others have to say.
Absolutely, sounds good. And if you still are around by the time they have had a little bit of their say, please you can come back
Yeah,
online,
okay,
please.
okay, I'm here. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram, and thank you for your kind words. Bill,
Uh,
thank you.
thank you, Arun. I'm a fan.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Through God's grace. Okay, let me bring Solomon. Solomon, you must
Hello, yeah,
be.
it's me, Solomon.
Yes.
It's me. I think I met you before in Speaker's Corner. I think it was about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, the little kid. Yeah, I don't want to show my face, but yeah, it's me.
No problem.
I got, I
No
got,
problem.
I got a bit of a question here. I
Sure.
think it's about another Christian YouTuber. What do you think about Robert Breaker and his videos?
Think about who? Sorry.
Robert Breaker. He's a missionary evangelist, and he's more into like the King James Bible and how he refutes the new versions. Me particularly, I don't have any problem with any versions, but I
Okay.
just want to ask, what do you think about like Robert Breaker?
I personally don't know about him. The name doesn't ring a bell. But even if it did, I don't think I'll be making comments about him here.
Mm-hmm.
I do apologize. Especially if you did you have any comments about the particular topic that we
Yeah,
have?
atheism. With atheism, is it linked with Pluto and like philosophers?
Um, Plato, yeah, in regards to the particular cosmological argument we are raising at the moment, did you have any comments or thoughts or any?
I
any
just got this Bible verse. It says, like atheism. A lot of atheists like to say there's no God, but in the Bible it
yeah.
tells us that the um, uh, I think it's in Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
It says Psalms 14 verse 1. It says, "The fool has said in his heart, there's no God, and they are corrupt, that they have done abominable works, and there's none that does good." So if you're
Yes.
atheist that says there's no God, according to the Bible, you're a fool.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sure Jason would agree, the humble person that he is, that we have, all of us have our sort of blind spots. I'm sure, having met Jason in person, I know him to be a sincere man,
I try to be.
so far. And Solomon, just to let you know, everyone has their journey.
Mm,
Getting to know about God is not some decision that someone could take like that.
yeah.
And when you're born, you don't necessarily have all the information that you could have. And people are born into all sorts of complex situations and so on. And so it's a
Yeah.
journey. And I can only hope that through God's grace, Jason would be aware of more and more arguments that
Mm,
Christians could present. And at the right time, when he is convinced, if he is convinced, and when he is convinced, he could take the leap of following Jesus Christ. And I'm
exactly.
assuming he would agree with me
Yeah, I
that he
agree.
would, when he does find Jesus to be reality, he would. Would you
Yeah,
agree with that, Jason?
yeah,
If
I
I was
agree.
yes.
Exactly. So what he is waiting for is for details to be convinced, and this is where, as Christians, we are supposed to present our arguments. I mean, before even we get to whether Jason was a fool, I can openly and readily admit that I'm a fool. I'm a big time fool.
Yeah.
No human being is wise enough to advise God. All of us have our fundamental flaws. And only through God's grace, step by step, we come across information which could help us ultimately make that decision. My dad, long story short, he passed away just a year ago, about a year ago.
Oh, Jason.
Um,
Oh,
no
I see.
problem. About a year ago, and he was, as a matter of fact, the inspiration for me to be an apologist. I had my many years of arguing with him and so on. He's a very sensible man,
Yeah,
but
I got one apologist to say. I think Peter F. Rockman's a good one. Billy Graham was good as well. But yeah, I take the Bible literally. So when I read the Bible, I don't make any like. You see how like people like Bob the Builder. I don't because in a lot in not Jason's in Jason Burns you know him. He's a Calvinist. I went onto his channel and said Bob was a heretic. I don't want to say he's a heretic, but like when Bob uses the Bible, he kind of uses other sources to support his links, whereas I'm more directly onto the text what it says. But yeah, that's what I was here to say.
yeah, I'm Solomon. I do apologize, but I'm going to refrain from making any particular comments about any particular person right now.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
if I do disagree with someone, if I do disagree with
Mhm,
someone, and I do disagree with a lot of people without giving any example, but
mhm.
the areas of disagreement I'd like to bring up as points of conversation as opposed to attacking any particular person or so. But thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming on
Thank
board.
you to be listening, man. Messi's better than Ronaldo. Let's go, man. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Solomon. Great
Yeah,
to catch up with you here.
thank you.
And
Yeah,
thank you. Let me
thank you.
please bring the next person on board. Um,
Hello, can you hear me?
hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, by God's grace. All right.
Can you hear me
Jason.
all right?
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay. I
I got
found
a couple quick questions.
absolutely. Before that, are you an atheist? Are you a
I'm
Christian?
an anti-theist.
Anti-theist. Okay. Good. Go on.
Jason, you're an atheist, right? Have you ever been a
Yeah.
Christian before?
No, never Christian, raised in a culturally Christian way.
Culturally Christian. All right.
Celebrate Christmas.
Have you ever drowned a baby?
I have never drowned a baby.
Have you ever drowned an entire planet?
I've never drowned an entire planet.
Then you're more moral than Yahweh.
You might have had good reasons for doing that.
So for the Christian, like you believe in the Bible, the Christian Bible, Yahweh, Jesus, the Trinity, right?
I do believe. Please come again. What is your name again? Sorry. Of course, your tag says.
Infant Relocation Service.
But what is your name? Would you like to give your name, or would you
My
like
name's Jason also, which means
Jason?
healer.
Okay, Jason. Okay, yeah.
Biblically, it means healer.
Jason, please go ahead with your particular point.
Okay, so do you believe that in the Bible it shows us God's moral, unchanging nature?
Do
Like
I
Yahweh
believe?
cannot change his nature, right? From the beginning to the end, he's always moral. Do not kill, and he lists the commandments, correct?
Can I please ask you, Jason, to make your point, the entire point, and then I can
Okay.
respond to that.
Okay.
Please.
I believe by reading the Bible, you can see that Yahweh doesn't abide by his own moral nature. It's a contradiction. So therefore, the God cannot exist by definition.
Okay. Is that your entire argument?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And what examples would you like to suggest that he doesn't stick to his own nature? Is that
He
like
commands
the
genocide and he flood the earth.
genocide and flooding, the particular case of Noahic flood?
Yes, Noah's Ark. Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Now, okay, maybe then I'll respond to that particular challenge and then see if you have any further challenge. But please bear in mind that wasn't touching on the particular philosophical argument we were trying to make earlier, but addressing that, Jason, I earnestly believe it is not logically inconsistent for a judge, judge in I hear a bit of an American accent there, in the judge in the US courts of law, or judge in the UK, or judge elsewhere, to believe that murdering is evil, while at the same time, where law permits to condemn someone to capital punishment based on the evil they have done. I do not find the personal conviction that he shouldn't murder to be inconsistent with his professional commitment to to say that someone should be subjected to capital punishment. I don't find that. God of the Bible is presented as that highest moral authority. God of the Bible is presented as someone who doesn't behave sort of in his whimsical manner. His moral disposition is well established right from the start, well established, and over a period of time even given more color, expanded. And his behavior always was consistent with his moral commitments, except when you say he killed, when you say he committed genocide, I'm going to say no, God executed judgment at various points in time.
Judgment on infants?
What's that?
Okay, are infants and babies and pregnant women like the unborn? Because we're talking about the whole earth here, right?
Yeah.
At the time, I understand there was a lot of bad stuff going on and God had to bring down his wrath, correct?
Yeah.
But there's also innocent people before a certain time. Infants and even the unborn children inside the pregnant women, they have no knowledge of this stuff. So I would consider them innocent, correct?
You're making a very, very good point, a very valid point. But let me respond to that in this particular way, please. If I were God, and I'm just making it a little bit better explanatory. If I'm that God, and if I'm going to implement a judgment, and if I'm going to say, all these adults, all these above 25 or whatever, all these parents are wicked, deviant, I'm going to kill them. I'm going to subject them to capital punishment. Once I have taken that decision, I would say I will be less moral if I leave the babies around to suffer without their parents. No one to take care of them. But rather, bearing in mind, biblical view is clear in this, bearing in mind, when babies die, they immediately come to me, come to God, go to God. Babies before the age of a moral nature, they would go to God. So that being the case, rather than leave them behind on earth with no one to take care of them, no adult to take care of them, to allow them to come to me would be a better moral choice, which is what God did on multiple occasions. When you read the text, when you can reasonably expect all the parents to be going, God, I think took the right decision to take the children to be with him.
Yeah.
Now,
hence my name. That's why he didn't actually kill them. He just relocated them to heaven, right?
Exactly. So to where he is, which is a higher moral decision than leaving them behind. In other words, I do not, let's put it this way, Jason. I've sort of gone through the Bible for years and years, and I can show you my study Bible, and I'm sure you would also have. But my personal conviction is God of the Bible always sticks to his moral standard and goes even beyond. That's the God I find in the Bible, not anyone to the contrary. But like you have rightly observed, I find this God of the Bible to be someone who judges also. Agreed. And as a matter of fact, the worst of judgments is going to come in the future. So if you're going to complain about Noahic flood, if you're going to complain about what happened to Amalekites or people in Sodom and Gomorrah or wherever else, I have a duty to let you know clearly a worse judgment is going to come. The final judgment is worst of all. It's a once for a lifetime judgment.
That the second one comes in fire, right?
Sorry, come again. I missed
It's the second one's coming in fire.
which second one?
I mean, if you don't believe, then the next judgment's in fire, not water.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
eternal fire.
So why did God create in the first place? Because Noah's Ark was supposed to be the chosen family of Noah, right?
Yeah.
So he killed everyone else, got rid of, well, not kill, he relocated them, right? So then Noah was supposed to, make everything better after that, but we're still stuck in the same place now. What's changed? What's
Well,
changed in the world?
And that's exactly what I'm going to ask you, Jason. Why aren't you changing? Why are you not allowing
I'm
change
fine.
to happen?
Why aren't you changing? I think you're
I have
Jason,
changed.
your buddy's on the right path.
You're quite.
How much is he
funny there.
sweating over there? How much is he sweating?
You're quite funny, Jason. But the serious point behind all of that is this: at the end of the day, the earth and the universe do not belong to you and me. We don't own it. We don't get to implement the laws or various top level choices. We don't get to. We are mere mortal inhabitants. God is the owner. He is the ultimate judge. He is the transcendental moral authority. And what he does is what is going to have long lasting effect. And so the point is, you and I need to get aligned with his nature. Now, if God of the Bible comes across as someone like the Islamic Allah, I can see why you might want to rebel. I would do the same. If Islamic Allah is the true God, I would rebel big time and say, you know what, give up on this God. I couldn't care less. If he's going to destroy me, fine. Because he's immoral on multiple counts, sexual immorality, all sorts of immorality. But God of the Bible is not like that. Go through the moral aspects of him, wonderful, spotless, phenomenal.
Do you know what they call that?
What is that?
They call it the outsider's test of faith. If a Muslim comes up to me and a Christian comes up to me and says, hey, believe in my God, and they both give me their book, how am I, as the outsider, supposed to figure out which God is real?
Well, I'm assuming, Jason, that given the fact that you are very intelligent to even name your profile when you came here to as infant relocation service with a deep meaning behind it, I'm assuming you have reasonable level of intellect. You can read the Quran for yourself. You can read the Bible for yourself.
I'm not going to read the Quran. I agree with you. Islam is 100% false.
Well, there we go. So clearly we're not talking about things on which we can't make comments. We can clearly make comments. Islam is horrible. I can make that comment, and I would be willing to even die for that comment through God's grace. It's so horrible that I don't even want Muslims to be in that. I want all Muslims to come out. But reading through the Bible, I see a God who is perfect in his nature. He is he's a judge, agreed. Some things that he does are really hard, I agree. But his moral character is impeccable. And without him doing what he does in terms of the hard decisions, heaven would be nothing but earth multiplied 10,000 times or a million times or a gazillion times. I don't want to live in that heaven. I want to go to heaven that God of the Bible has, where only righteousness can enter in. Everything else would be consumed outside of it. I earnestly invite you to get there.
I could question you for like 10 hours.
Absolutely, Jason.
I've been doing this my whole life. I was a Christian for like 20 years.
Okay. How old are you now?
I'm 42.
42. Okay. What, the first 20 years Christian, I'm assuming, or?
Yeah, here and there. I'm not going to say I was like the most perfect Christian ever.
But you were aware of the Bible and, you know.
Yep, went to church, altar boy, baptized, confirmed, got my Bible over here.
Yeah.
One quick question. Do you study anything outside the Bible, like surrounding the biblical times or before it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're interested in that stuff?
Absolutely.
Have you ever read the book, The Epic of Gilgamesh?
Epic of Gilgamesh. I have a book on the Epic of Gilgamesh here. I need to find out where exactly it is right now.
Anyway, it's not a big deal. I won't take up too much more of your time, but
Yeah,
there's
sure.
websites where you can go on and look at the flood of the Bible and the Epic of Gilgamesh and see the comparison.
If you're talking about the archaeological Epic of Gilgamesh, what I can say is they are comparable to a degree, but you can, going through the details, I can clearly say, did you know that in the Epic of Gilgamesh, you essentially have characters which look similar to what you find in the Bible, except reversed. Good becomes bad, bad becomes good. Are you aware of that?
I read it a couple of years ago. I'm not familiar with that, but I know a lot of the ravens and the birds are almost one for one. It's pretty similar.
Pretty similar in some regards, but I'll give you a simple example. Yahweh, Yahweh is the God of the Bible. According to Epic of Gilgamesh, the God who Gilgamesh was trying to save people from is Huawa, which etymologically is related to Yahweh. And the Bible does talk about people who, essentially, long story short, Jason, the point is, Epic of Gilgamesh, I believe, has historical, let's say, historical value, but I do not think it undermines the historical veracity of the Bible. Maybe I'll leave it at that. And can I please suggest to you, Jason, maybe if you don't mind, maybe if you can email me on info@operationstephen.org. Please join us online any number of times when, especially we're dealing with atheism, agnosticism, or any other worldview. Please email me. I'd really like to have a catch up with you over Zoom or something outside of one of these live streams, if you don't mind.
Have you ever heard of the channel Pine Creek?
No.
He does open live calls, and I would love for you to talk to him. He's been doing it for years.
Is that an American guy?
Yeah, he's some old white guy, some idiot white guy. You'll destroy him with that whole 2-hour intro to math to get to Jesus. It'll work. Theist Thursdays. He does Theist Thursdays. Call in. All right, guys.
Okay. Great to catch up, Jason.
Jason, stay strong, bro.
Yeah, have a great time. God's blessings. Ultimate truth. Ultimate truth, Al-Haq, the truth. Hello, you are online right now. Are you a Muslim, Ultimate Truth?
Yes, sir, I'm Muslim, and I would love to join. Before I asked you to let me join with the atheist guy, bashing Islam, while you're Christian, I ask you to let me join, so it'd be 3 of us. It'd be fair, right? So basically,
yeah, go on.
So both of you went under the morals, right? If there is any moral right now that should be followed, you violated it, right? He's an atheist, he didn't say anything. You're a Christian, you didn't say anything. You're there bashing Islam. I said, hey, I'm a Muslim, I'm here, hey, let me in, let me represent. No. So the answer for him, just to say that God exists, is simple. We ask him today, if we have 8-point-some billion people, right? Oh, I gotta call you back. Sorry.
Okay. Sure, no problem.
No, go ahead. No. I am talking to the person that was calling me.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yes. We 8 point something billion people on Earth right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we all had to be judged, anybody steals something would go into jail. Would be anybody left on Earth?
If the jail's on Earth, yeah.
It would be nobody left. We all have stolen something.
I think
So-
I think you didn't quite catch what Jason was saying. If the jail was in Earth, we'll all be in Earth still.
What?
If the jail is in Earth, is on the Earth, we'll
Yes,
all be.
I'm talking about the jail is on Earth. If today we had to be all be judged, 8 billion we are. Anybody have stolen something would be going to jail. Is there going to be one person left on Earth?
On Earth.
I mean, left free. Yeah, you know what I mean. Free.
Please go on. Make your point.
My point is,
by the way.
we don't see. It's because we don't see people stealing. People steal every day. God sees everything. Because his argument was, why did kill the people of Noah? Why did God kill those? Why did God exterminate those? Because he sees everything. They're all killers.
Okay.
Oh, if you would have been able to see the whole world today, if God would judge us today, every single one of you who have stolen something will be in jail. It'll be nobody in the streets but animals.
Okay. I'll hack. Let's put it this way. God of the Bible is a judge. He has judged in the past, and he will judge in the future. Now, in regards to Islam, that isn't going to help you. You need to come to Jesus Christ to understand what we were talking about so far. You need to come to Jesus Christ. The point
Please,
earlier.
please, let's stop that preaching mode, please. I'm not here to preach. Let's talk scientific thing. You're an atheist. I'm a Muslim. Let's talk science. Let's talk proof. Don't mean, hey, you need to come to Jesus Christ. Please.
Okay.
Please.
Scientifically speaking, did you have any challenge to what we were talking about so far?
Scientifically, it's not about what we. I believe you're here. He's an atheist. He does not believe in deity, that there is God. You believe that there is a God. You believe that your God has come down as a human being on earth, right? To give his life for us, for anybody. Even that was not enough. He died, should be enough now. Everybody should be in damn the freaking heaven now. No, it's not enough. The death of God is not enough. You had to believe in that death. It's not enough. You had to lead righteous. It's not enough. You gotta love your neighbor. It's not enough. You gotta hand the other face. It's not enough. You gotta do all of that. God is dead. The God of the Quran, let me make my case to prove to you that Allah is the real God. Allah is not making a mistakes when it comes to historical facts in the Quran, but that's my only source. By the way, hold on. I gotta make a case here.
Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, please.
You can't give me 30 seconds. I'm making a case. I'm showing to you that there's some historical mistakes in the Bible.
No.
I'm corrected by Allah.
Please make your case.
Okay, my case is there are historical facts, errors in the Bible. Like, did Joseph meet any Pharaoh? No. When Joseph was there was no Pharaoh, the institution of Pharaoh. In the Quran, he did not meet Pharaoh, came later on, Moses them, but in the time of Joseph, it was Aziz as a king. That's a historical mistake. We know it's a fact. So the Bible is what? A collection of so-called gospels. God is telling us what the Bible is. God is telling us he sent to you the Injil is for the Jews, is to the lost sheep of Israel in the Quran.
Okay. I'm going to stop you there because you seem to be on the preaching mode right now. I'm going to stop you there. Now, I heard an argument so far, which is that historically you think the Bible has got facts wrong and you think the Quran has got facts right. I'm going to disagree with you. If you want to talk about Joseph and Egypt, I'd like to let you know very clearly that the Quran thinks that during the time of Joseph in Egypt, they had crucifixion as a capital punishment. This is a laughing sort of joke. Laughing sort of joke. Anyone who has any remote idea of history knows crucifixion wasn't around in Egypt, and certainly not during the time of Joseph. So you need to give up on the Quran. But in terms, if you were to look at historical errors, coming to where we left off with Kalam cosmological argument, the universe is created, and from there taking forward, I think as a Christian, I am able to present precisely who that creator God is, especially based on the historicity of what happened in the life of Jesus Christ. And I earnestly believe also, even if I give you 1,000,000 years, billion years, you would not be able to take the Kalam cosmological argument forward to explain how Islamic Allah is that creator God. That's my challenge.
Okay.
Creator God showed up.
Yeah, I heard everything you said. You ran from the. Now you tell me yes, you're right. Hold on.
Showed up on earth. And
why are you doing this, bro?
His supernatural attributes were visible. Crucifixion, resurrection on earth. You have nothing equivalent to that in the Quran or in Islamic history.
I said you ran from the first argument. You basically saying yes, you're right. The Bible is wrong, and the Quran too is wrong. Hey, listen. You never answered to that. You never said no. It was Pharaoh at the time of Joseph. You never said that. You ignored that. You know that's wrong. Listen, bro, I didn't cut you off, bro. I didn't cut you off. Don't do that.
How much of Egyptian history are you aware of?
Bro, all I said was you did not respond to that argument.
No.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Bro, the atheist is laughing at you, man. Please don't do that. He knows. He knows you ran from that.
I'm asking you.
I gave you.
Of the Egyptian history are you aware of?
Bro, why are you doing this?
What is that?
Listen, why are you cutting me off like this? It's my turn to say, let me rebuttal you. Just let me tell you, and then I will go. You ask me a question about creation. How can I prove that Allah created the heaven and earth? I will.
I'd like to know.
I was just responding.
Alak, I'd really like to know a simple thing. If you want me to get into the details of what is recorded in the history of Joseph, I can, but I can't speak to someone who is ignorant and try to make my point. How much of the Egyptian history do you really know?
Enough to know that it was no Pharaoh in the time of Joseph.
How much?
That's all that matters. It's all I know about it. I know that it was not Pharaoh in the time of Joseph. That's all I know. That's all. Nothing else. Nothing else. And know that I am from Senegal. I studied in the University of Cheikh Anta Diop. The biggest Egyptologue on earth is from Senegal. His name is, and we got the same first name, Cheikh Anta Diop. And that's my name too. Just so you know. Just so you know, my people know better and I know better about Egypt than anybody can think.
So you know better.
Do you know who Cheikh Anta Diop is? Do you know who Cheikh Anta Diop is?
How much of the Egyptian history do you know?
Enough to know that in the time of Joseph, there was no Pharaoh.
No,
that's what I said.
Maybe there is a hearing issue here.
Did I answer, brother? Did I answer the question?
Well, you gave me an answer, but that answer, do you know what the answer means? Enough to know that there did not exist a Pharaoh. You know what is enough to know?
No, don't cut. In the time of Joseph. Don't cut my answer. In the time of Joseph. In the time of Joseph.
Al-Haq, I need to stop you there.
You have to know that Jacob never met Pharaoh. Never, ever, ever.
Yeah.
Enough to know that Joseph is the one that took Jacob in Egypt. Enough to know that. Enough to know that when Pharaoh, the institution of Pharaoh started, You
I'm
don't know
really,
none of that. Enough
Ahmed,
to
I'm
know
really going to stop you there.
that.
I do apologize. I really do apologize. You don't seem to, you think this is your stream. It is not. Now, the point is, I don't want to speak to people who don't know enough for them to ramble on top of what I try to tell them over and over again. I don't want to do that. It's a simple reasoning with which I avoided some stuff. My focus was Kalam cosmological argument based on what happened in the life of Jesus Christ. I can take that forward to suggest that the God of the Bible is the one true God. That I can make. And in Islam, you simply cannot do it. But if I give you half a more minute, you might even say that Islamic Allah exists. You might even go on to say that the Quran is the word of God. Those are laughable things to say, especially when you cannot give evidence to back them up. Now, there are a billion plus Muslims who can say that. Just memorize something and then come and vomit that. Yes, Quran is the word of God. And if I ask them why, they wouldn't know an answer. That is what you are doing. I don't care where you're from. You could be from Senegal and absolutely have no clue about Egypt. It doesn't matter where you're from. The question asked is, how much do you know? The answer that I've got from you is that clearly not enough to be able to make any other point from that single statement you made. So if you want to deal with historical veracity of the Quran, you are most welcome. We are going to have some other stream, some other day. Today, atheism, agnosticism. I'm going to stop you. Of course, I have already stopped you there. I do sincerely apologize. If you hadn't sort of spoken over me.
I got an answer for that. I got an answer for the creation of the.
And okay. So, Ram is still there. Ram. Jason, for how much longer can you go?
Let's say 20 minutes.
20 minutes, let's say, yeah. Okay, so let's give Ram some more time there. Ram, you should be back here, yeah. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, thank you. No, it was interesting. It's interesting to hear all these views. So in fact, I will take it up from where we left when you were talking about that Malaysian aircraft going down and that happening in reality, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when we are talking about this Malaysian airliner, not everyone is thinking about it. You are thinking about it because that thought came to your mind. I am thinking about it because you spoke about it, and I am talking to you. And Jason is talking is also like thinking about it now because we are talking about it. So I mean, how many people? When we say everyone knows the Malaysian airliner, we are thinking in our minds that everyone is thinking about it, but in reality, only a very limited number of people, that too in our minds, is thinking about the Malaysian airliner. So, life, when it happens to us, according to Advaita, according to the non-duality philosophy, the philosophy of Advaita, universe appears to us according to according to those different modes of material nature that we already discussed. And uh, it's very spontaneous. I mean, it's you didn't know that you would be born in a certain family. I didn't know that I would be born in a certain family. All these things happen to us. So uh, you know first of all, like accepting that these are our circumstances, uh, and not judging, and uh, that is called surrender. Advaita says that if we accept whatever our circumstances are, um, without judging, that is called surrender. So whatever is happening to me, I am I am uh, I am accepting it without making any judgment about why this is happening to
So,
me or why this is not happening to me. That
Ram,
is called surrender.
Ram, if I could stop you briefly there. So let me ask you a simple question: do you believe there is good and bad in this world, or are you saying you
Yeah,
don't
so
believe?
let's no, of course. I mean, you were talking about some guru in Tamil Nadu who had these cameras fitted inside his
Yeah,
house or his cave, and you were talking about sex. Now,
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, what makes you think? Or there's been a lot of talk about sex being immoral and all that. So, I mean, how do we know? What makes us think that sex is immoral? I mean, what is the standard? Where is that standard that okay, if you go beyond this, this is good. If you are under it, then it's bad. I mean, who has set up this standard? Where does this moral compass come into existence? I mean, who has decided? Who has said sex is bad? If sex was bad, then there would be none of us would exist. I mean, the whole universe, the beings in the universe, in body and flesh, they exist because of sex. I mean, and
Ram,
then
Ram,
now we are saying,
Ram, are you married, Ram, or not?
I'm divorced actually, and
Okay, I
after
do
that,
apologize.
no,
I do
that's
apologize.
okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
do apologize. Um, 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 okay, but you've asked a very good question. Who is to decide what is
Yeah.
right versus what is wrong? And the answer, you are right. You are right. If there is no person called the Creator God, who is there to decide? I can't force my view on you. You can't force your view on me. No one can force anyone's view on anyone else. If there is no transcendental source of morality, we are all peers. You may think something is good, someone else may think something is bad, or something is good, and so on. But that is where my suggestion, my commendation to you is going to be Jesus Christ. I'd really like to focus on Jesus and his life, because in the life of Jesus Christ, in human history, not in my imagination, but outside of my imagination, this is true. Even before Jason considered these things, this is true. Even before anyone considered these things, these are historical events. Jesus died, came back alive. Any view, Advaita or any other view that you come up with to explain the existence of universe should accommodate the fact that Jesus in human history died and came back alive. And using that, I'm going to advance the argument that Jesus is the only verifiable creator God. There is no other creator gods who can be verified to be creator God. Only Jesus. I was speaking to Jason earlier about the cosmological argument. Of course, we left off, and Jason had a comment to make there. Maybe we'll go back to that in a minute. But there we said this creator God has to be personal, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, of immense power, and so on. Fitting with all the conclusion points that we got there, using the historical case for Jesus Christ, we can say it is Jesus who is that creator God. The one, the Bible says, the one for whom and through whom all things were created. Because he can be verified, and that is the key part. I always raise before people who believe in Indian sort of religions, Indian sort of mindsets, or various forms. The point I always advance is verifiability. Jesus is that only verifiable God. All other ideas are ideas. Sometimes they are awfully inadequate. And this is where I recommend you to follow us, because when I deal with when I deal with Indian religions, I will customize my arguments for Indian religions. And there you would see why I consider Ramayana not to be history, why I consider Mahabharata not to be history, and so on. We'll go through all sorts of different details there. But the long story short, the point is only verifiable God, Jesus Christ, and only verifiable God can be the moral source of authority, and therefore what he says is right, what he says shouldn't be done is wrong. Sexuality, he says what needs to be done, what needs to be upheld, we stick to his commendation to us. That'll be my answer for you, Ram.
Yeah, okay. I've been you're right. I would say I have read in a my schooling has been in a convent where I underway. I am very comfortable with the tradition of like baptism, seeing sisters and fathers and brothers around. Going to a chapel, and so I have I used to sing jingle bells and all that, and I just love all this. So the whole tradition. Even right now, this is I'm in Bath actually. I'm in Bath, UK, and I
Mhm.
was planning to come to London someday to see you at the Speaker's Corner, which I
Absolutely,
discovered
most
just
welcome.
yeah, which I discovered just recently. So I mean, I completely am, I'm in line in tune with what Christianity has to preach, and I love Jesus Christ. I remember several years ago when I was going through some kind of a crisis in my life, and Jesus just he appeared like he seemed to like tell me in my heart that hey everything will be okay. So I was in Delhi at that time, and in Vasant Vihar there's a church. So this calling was too great in my heart that Jesus Christ is like he's going to make everything okay. So I went there, and there's a big cross and a big statue of Jesus Christ in that church. I went to that church. I got a lot of reassurance in my heart, and so I've always like loved Jesus Christ, and I've never been away from him. But I have, that's what I said. I discovered this philosophy of Advaita just recently, not too long ago. So when I just really got, sometimes you do binge watching and binge reading, whatever. So I did like a binge, what do you call that? Digging into like what these guys have to say, and that made a lot of sense to me. That really made a lot of sense to me, and that part of the philosophy which says that the universe just comes to you according to the modes of material nature. Like Lord Shiva, he carries a trident, a trishul. So those three spikes in a trident, they are indicative. They are symbolic of those three modes of material nature, which in Hindi is called sattva, tamas, and rajas, something like that. The whole world is governed by those three modes, and we, as the pure being, uh, we are just the witness, something like that. I mean, we are just the witness of this whole happenings. So I just
And
thought, I should discuss that with you, understand your point of view. What do you have to say? Because I see so many of your videos, and even Uncle Sam, sometimes I really feel bad about, how people treat him. Even, right now I was watching this Imam who was like asking you to shut up. He was calling you an idiot and so many things, but you were so patient, and, so I really feel bad how these people treat you. And you are very patient, because you probably are used to people opposing your point of view, and you have a lot of patience with that kind of opposing ideas. So I thought I should talk to you about what do you have to think about, or what do you have to say about this Eastern philosophy of even Buddhism and all that. I will probably read about it, and then I'll have more things to discuss when I see you, when I meet you. So that was the idea, and I love Jesus Christ. He's helped me a lot of times, is all I can tell you, Arun.
absolutely, Ram, it's a great pleasure hearing those things from you. I'm sort of eagerly awaiting. I'm believe it or not, I'm doing my. Can you see? I don't know if you can see the shortened version of Bhagavad Gita there, the Upanishads, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and so on.
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah, I see that.
eagerly going through these, and I'm already essentially I'm developing my sort of understanding of these to be able to launch a systematic sort of commentary on these things. So please stay in touch with us. If you can please email
Okay.
to the email address that you see in the description, please do info@operationstephen.org. I'd really like to stay in touch with you. And like you said, if you were to come to London at some stage through God's grace, Speaker's Corner, please say hello, and hopefully we can stay in touch. And quarter 2 2023, through God's grace, I'll be launching my thorough evaluation on Hinduism, where you would find essentially my entire case. And there you would find that, I'm going to say that Mahabharata is not history. Ramayana could not be history based on the contents of Ramayana, not based on my ideas. Going through Ramayana, I can say it is not history. Going through Mahabharata, it's not history. Going through the information on Shiva and all sorts of other deities, I can say the detailed evaluation. Buddhism in India, Buddhism today is not the Buddhism at the start, and I can show you in detail from the archaeology, not the archaeology as you know about the Ajanta and Ellora cave temples, which are the first temples in India. You can go through them in time sequence, and I can show you, well, look at the first temple. That is not a Buddhist temple. That is clearly not a Buddhist temple. But look at the last temple. That is clearly a Buddhist temple, similar to what it is today. So you can see the evolution of how Buddhism changed and so on. So anyway, long story short, please stay in touch, and through God's grace, let's deal with these things in detail. In the meantime, I'm going to reassert this one point again. I'm glad that Jesus spoke to you. I'm really glad that he said things would be fine. And
things did become fine. Things became so fine that it's unbelievable. Not only did he correct everything, he led them. He sustained that for a very long time. So I came out of that complete nonsense state of I was in some sort of a state at that time. There was a lot of I was deluded, and he just set everything up for me. Yeah. He set up everything up for me.
My commendation is, please email me, and I'd like to give you some insight on how to begin reading the Bible. And what I'm going to suggest to you is, this Jesus who spoke to you is the only verifiable God, and he is able to give you a clear worldview when all sorts of different things exist in this world, all sorts of different philosophies. His worldview is historically grounded, comprehensive, takes into account all available evidence, and still would be consistent. And that is the key thing. Like I said, Advaita would not even stand when we begin launching a proper scrutiny, would not even stand. But Jesus and his historical case would stand tall. So, few points for you to take home, Ram. Email, please. Come say hello when you can, but please email before that. And I'd like to speak to you about how to understand Jesus further through the Bible.
I certainly would. Thank you. So you are in the Speaker's Corner on Sunday, or how?
God strengthening, most of Sundays I should be there. But if you email, if for any reason on a particular Sunday I'm not going to be there, you will be aware. And I'm hoping you'll email before that, so we'll be, by the time you come, we'll already be in touch.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Arun. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for hearing me, and I feel very happy. Thank you.
Absolutely, pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye for now. Okay. Good night. Okay.
Yeah,
bye.
Good night. Bye. Good night. God's blessings. Jason, I do realize you said 20 more minutes. Now, shall we wrap up? You were making some points earlier. Do you think we can spend 5 minutes on that and then sort of wrap up there?
Sure.
Do you remember the points, or?
So vaguely, so identifying the cause of the universe.
Yeah.
Or the cause of the observable universe.
Yeah.
Set of attributes which would you say are the only things that could fit the bill.
Yeah.
And they are divine attributes.
Yeah.
That step seems
You
less solid than the main
argument.
argument.
Okay. In other words, you're happy with at least based on the scientific arguments, you're happy with the conclusion that there is a God. There is a reason for the existence of the universe.
Yeah.
But now then to cause for the existence of the universe, but from there to essentially describe that cause, that particular step you weren't completely on board with.
Right.
Okay, maybe we can go through that just for a few minutes there. So so this is not what I want. Okay, present. Okay, share screen. All right. Window, cosmological argument. Okay, cool. So maybe I can. Okay. So the nature, conclusion. Let's say we're on the same page. Nature of the cause. So let's go through, not in this particular order necessarily. Let me go through in an order of my choice. I do apologize. This is not necessarily the order in which I'd like to present. But okay, so we understand. We earlier defined what the universe is.
Right. The physical universal.
Exactly. All of known physical reality.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm assuming we agree that includes space and time. The dimensions, space and time.
The dimensions, I'm not sure about that. It includes the time and space aspect of anything within the universe, or anything within the physical universe.
The known reality comes along with time and space. You can't separate them out. Earth, for example, exists within time and space.
Sure.
You can't envisage an Earth without time and space.
Sure.
You can't envisage any part of the universe, any part, moon or whatever else, distant galaxies, any part without time and space.
Sure.
All of known physical reality includes time and space.
Yes.
Yeah. So in other words, when we were earlier using the term universe, we not only mean physical stuff like heavenly bodies, we also include the dimensions of space and time in that.
Okay. Well, I don't. That's a bit difficult to understand. In terms of, okay, let's go with that for now.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, there is no universe without space and time.
Sure.
A universe comes as a package.
But could there be space and time outside of the universe?
Well, if all of known reality, which is subjected to science, all of known physical reality is what we call universe, there is nothing outside of it which is physical reality.
Well, everything known, but
No.
Are you pointing something beyond that?
I am talking about all when scientists use the term universe, they do not just mean observed universe.
Sure.
They don't even actually mean observable universe.
Sure.
They are actually talking about even non-observed parts of universe.
Okay.
In other words, all of material, all of physical reality is included in this universe.
Okay.
What has already been observed, what could be observed but not yet observed, and what is theoretically not even observable so far.
Okay.
In other words, everything is included there.
Everything. Well, it would not include God.
Not God, because I'm talking about physical reality. God is scientists, of course, aren't talking about physical. The Bible doesn't present a physical God. The Bible presents God in a spiritual manner, going beyond what we observe in the physical realm.
Okay.
Yeah. So clearly, God isn't included in the way Bible presents God, and God isn't included in the way scientists postulate this term called universe.
Right.
Yeah. So they are seen now. Of course, if someone somewhere can, to make a particular argument, can rephrase or can define universe in a different manner. I'm not talking about that. Yeah,
Okay.
I am talking about the general definition of universe and general definition of God and so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So all of universe includes time and space. So and that had a beginning. Time and space had a beginning,
Okay.
which means whatever the cause was has to be outside of this. Which, in other words, whatever the cause was for this universe has to be without time, because all of time and space is within the universe.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's been demonstrated. All of time and space in principle. We've gone over well, the scientific support for a finite universe,
Yeah.
for a
I
universe with a beginning. So that goes over the certain. Anyway, so what I'm saying,
yeah.
well, I say the same thing I said at the park. In the beginning, whatever existed. As terms of its timelessness or spacelessness, whatever it is, we're talking about the beginning of time, and we're talking about something that interacts with the universe in the beginning, or something that is in a relationship of causality with the universe, and that happened at a certain time in the beginning.
That happened at the beginning. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So to say that the cause is timeless, I don't think that is. Well, I'm not sure how that fits into.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me put it this way, Jason. So if we go back to the original, the entire the formulation of the entire argument.
Yep.
Premise 2 is about the universe. Yeah.
Okay, and you take that as including time as a dimension.
And space as a dimension. That's the regular definition of universe.
Yep.
Universe is all of known physical reality.
Okay.
And all of known physical reality includes time and space.
Okay, yeah.
That's the regular definition. That's not my special definition of any sort. This is the regular definition, and this is the definition which even atheistic scientists would work with.
Sure.
All of known physical reality includes time and space. And so when I say all of known, when premise 2 says all of known physical reality, including time and space, began to exist,
yeah,
outside of this reality, now we are looking for the cause for that universe. And the cause for that universe cannot be something that is limited by time and space.
Limited by time and space.
I.e. contained or measured or calibrated, something that can be referred back to time and space. It simply can't be, because all of time and space is within the universe, and the universe, this entity is the cause for the beginning of the universe, and so this cause exists non-contingent on the universe.
Okay.
So this cause exists even before the universe. I shouldn't use the term before. This cause exists even outside of the frame of reference of the universe.
Okay.
But not in the spatial manner.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Uh,
Okay, but maybe I can frame this in a better manner. This cause cannot be bound by time and space at all, because I am talking about the beginning of the universe, and the universe includes time and space.
Okay.
Yeah. So clearly, this cause has to be timeless and spaceless. Because of that, that is how we have formulated the argument.
Okay. So well, the alternative would be tracing back the universe logically and as far as we can understand, or so tracing back, to trace back existence to a starting point. Well, whatever its nature is, it is well, it's part of the sum total of what exists. Well, and you say the universe is not is a subset of that. But if the starting point is the existence and let's maybe move on from timeless and spaceless.
Okay, sure. So my point simply is, the moment you understand the argument here properly, the formulation here properly, Jason,
Yeah.
all of these should be not up to contention. All of these should be an obvious next step.
Okay.
Now, these may not be an obvious next step in your mind only if you misunderstand the formulation of the argument. The formulation of the argument is universe began to exist. Part of the formulation is the universe began to exist.
Okay, so space
And
and time began.
Exactly, began to exist. Anything which was the cause of that universe, which includes all of space and time, has to be necessarily, it's a natural logical inference, has to be necessarily spaceless, timeless.
Well, it has to be separate from the universe, but why can't it be a spatial, temporal?
Well, if it is spatial and temporal,
yeah,
even for it to exist, it can't cause it. Okay. We are saying the universe had a cause at that beginning point. In other words, we are saying space and time began to exist at that beginning point. So anything that caused can't be a function of that space and time.
it'll be, well, kind of like a separate space and time.
Well, yes, something else. You call it something else. Yeah, clearly, the cause is defined by some other dimensions. You may call it space 1, space 2, or space God, or whatever.
Well,
some other dimension.
I think space is space. It's
no, that's not true. That's not true. All of universe, space and time that we are aware of in physical reality is part of universe. So, however God occupies space is a different dimension.
Okay. Well, I'm not convinced of the idea that you can have space without anything in that space. But maybe. Without some space is what separates objects.
So, are you saying you can't envision anything without the idea of space?
I'm not. That's not my point. It's well, so the universe has a cause of its beginning, but that term universe refers to something involving space-time.
Yep.
Does it? I don't think it's shown that it exhausts every possible spatial or temporal thing.
That is the definition of universe. Every possible space and time thing that we can think of is what we have defined as universe. And there is not much complexity to it. What is time can be a complex dimension to define, but once we have sort of put that in a variable, we call it t or something. However complex it is to define, we know that is time.
Sure.
And that is part of the universe. We know that began to exist. We know space began to exist.
We'll go with that.
That is what the definition is here. And that is what essentially the scientific observations that we were talking about earlier has an immediate impact on the very definition here, or actually applied to the definition we used earlier.
Right.
So, in other words, Jason, maybe in the interest of time, we can maybe wrap up in a couple of minutes there. The point simply is the argument, the formulation of the main argument is strong in my view, and we agreed. There were two premises. Premise one, we agreed, was a valid premise. Premise two, I gave 4 different supporting evidence or supporting points to say to establish the validity of premise 2, and we agreed at least on the validity of 2 of them, at least the scientific observations. The other 2, I think you can take home and we can discuss offline, on the nature of infinity and so on. I believe all 4 are sound points to make there. Now, once we have done that, so we are in agreement on at least one way of supporting the validity of each of the premises. At least one we agreed on, which means the conclusion is obvious. So we can conclude that the universe had a cause or has a cause for its beginning. And my point now is simply going to be the nature of the cause should be obvious. Some of the aspects of the nature of the cause is obvious from the very definition of the universe, namely spacelessness, immaterialness, timelessness, and changelessness. These are things which ought to be immediately obvious from the very definition of the universe. But from the fact that we are saying universe is caused by this cause in itself to prevent an infinite regress will be an uncaused entity. So that is by the fact of essentially arriving at a logical cause for the existence of the universe without entering into absurdities. Uncaused and beginningless, because he's uncaused, beginningless, and by the fact that he is bringing into existence the entire universe, he has to be able to conceive things in his mind, and therefore personal, sentient being, a being which is able to think and decide, and thing has unimaginable power to bring what is conceived in the mind to known reality, or as known reality. So in other words, I think all of these qualifications for what is the cause, we should be able to substantiate fairly easily. Maybe we can, in the interest of time, maybe close there. Maybe I don't know if you want to have any final. Did you find the conversation meaningful, productive? Of course, you might not agree on all conclusions so far, but are we going somewhere, you think?
I think so. I think it's we'll digging into exactly what we mean by these terms, and to make sure we're not
absolutely
adding any secret premises.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Sounds good. So, Jason, it has been a pleasure to have you here. Of course, it was a long conversation, but pretty long. But I think it was quite engaging. We had a number of people who showed up to make their particular points, and it was all useful, I think. So, I think I'm quite glad that we had this catch up, and hopefully we can follow up offline on some of the points you have raised. Thank you very much for all those who joined online on the 3 different YouTube channels. It was a great pleasure being able to reach out to you in this particular manner. And I do see. Did you want to say?
Well, thank you, Soko. Thank you, Revelations.
Absolutely. Cool. So thank you very much, guys. And I do see some comments there. I see Sam, you're asking about some sermons and stuff. Please, if anyone wants to ask any particular question on top of what has been already discussed, please email. You should find in the description page of the video in Operation Stephen YouTube channel, the email address that you can use to reach out to me or my team. Please email. But other than that, it was a wonderful time, and God's blessings, and hope to catch up in another live stream. Thank you. God's blessings.